Welcome, everybody. I'm calling to order for the board meeting, April 28. The first item is flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is the board agenda approval. Can we have a motion on the table, please?
So moved.
Lori, thanks. And
I second.
Thanks, fellas. And can we have a roll call vote for this?
Yes, trustee Lou,
Aye.
trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
trustee Vogel,
Aye.
trustee Leong,
Aye.
trustee Madhato,
Aye. Thank you. So we have so Mrs. Yao is out of office for a family emergency, so she wouldn't be here. And request Ms. Main to cover for her. So the second item is superintendent's report. It's all yours now.
And so there will be no superintendent's report tonight.
Oh, that's sad. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have the next item is the April classified employee of the month. Mike, you're going to. Yep. Thanks, Mike. Okay.
Okay, this is the most fun part of the evening so far. Gives me great pleasure to talk about a super employee by the name of Ophelia Padilla, who is custodian 2 at Cupertino Middle School. The staff was asked to put together a summary of Ophelia, and I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to turn it over to the principal to talk about Ophelia. But the staff said Ophelia is constantly on the go on our campus. She's always taking care of our campus, whether it's by picking up trash outside, blowing leaves, wiping down the water fountains, cleaning the bathrooms, cleaning up after a sick kid, or vacuuming classrooms or disinfecting surfaces around the campus. She always has a smile on her face. Ophelia takes the time to say good morning to everyone and greet students as they walk through the gates on the campus. Ophelia welcomes each and every person to campus with shining eyes and a warm spirit. She's kind, compassionate, and a dedicated worker. She can be seen at all times throughout the day, hard at work beautifying our campus. She works so hard putting effort into making CMS more inviting by doing things like decorating the staff room. Ophelia approaches difficult situations with kindness, patience, and warmth. She deals gently with potentially volatile people. We appreciate Ophelia's conscientious work ethic. She embodies, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So I'd like to turn it over to the principal from Cupertino Middle School.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I want to take a moment to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I am so incredibly proud to be here to not only share with you about how wonderful Ophelia is, but also to be here for Mr. Judd Sigler, who I know is next on the agenda. But I do want to take this moment in time and really highlight Ophelia. So for everyone, I actually met Ophelia quite a few years ago. She was at CMS one evening subbing for one of our night custodians who was out. And I went to introduce myself to her and to thank her for being at CMS that night. And what I remember so clearly about that night was Ophelia's smile. It was just so incredibly bright and so filled with warm fuzzies that you just couldn't help but be drawn to an immediate positivity of who Ophelia is. And so it's really my privilege tonight to sing Ophelia's praises to the entire CUSD community. Ophelia is so incredibly positive. She greets everyone with a welcoming smile every time she is on campus. She cares about the quality of her job and the job that she does. She works tirelessly, not only to keep all parts of campus clean, in the sanitation sense, but also in a safe learning environment sense, because she does a lot of removing of graffiti around campus. And oftentimes this is all done without students and staff being aware. That's how quick she is in making sure that's taken care of. Ophelia really enjoys the students. She goes out of her way to help them. She supports all staff members. She works longer hours to cover for her custodial team, and she has a helping hand ready at all times. Ophelia is really one of those behind the scenes staff members that makes the operations of CMS run very smoothly. And it really is my honor here to speak on behalf of our CMS staff on how blessed we feel to have her as part of our school. And so one of the things that we say loud and clear at CMS is there's a lot of Bear pride. Go Bears. And Ophelia, thank you so much for being a part of CMS staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean and Mike. And Ophelia, you want to speak? Is she online? Hey,
Ophelia, you are muted. Ophelia, you need to unmute.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I want to say thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure. I'm so happy with my job. I enjoyed everything, every part of my job. And it's my privilege to stay in Cupertino Unified School District. Thank you so much, everyone. I have my pin. I received today my recognized. Thank you so much. My pen too. Thank you. And thank you so much. It's only I want to say. Thank you, Regine. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody.
congratulations, Ophelia. Anyone else want to speak? Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you. We'll go to the next one, another recognition, CIF award recipients. I think Leslie, you're going to.
Great. So I have the pleasure of introducing Karen Muscala, who's going to.
You're
come up
not. Mikey.
to- Better?
Yeah, better. Good.
I have the privilege of introducing Karen Riscala, who is going to come up and talk about the CEEP awards that her team are going to present tonight. And then just from the bottom of our heart, Stacey and I want to thank you so much for your long legacy of supporting the district, just as a parent in our district, and also just in the CEEP role, and also to CEEP and the board members for everything they do to support our schools and our kids and the great things that we can do because you help us make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to extend a thanks to everyone for letting CEEP be here this evening to present these awards. We're super excited to acknowledge all of these people this evening. I thought I'd start out first, just let you all know I am a board member, current president of the organization. CEEF is the Cupertino Educational Endowment Foundation, and our organization was founded in 1984 to raise and leverage private support to provide additional funding for all of the schools in CUSD. We're proud to have granted over $19 million to CUSD in the schools since the 80s. And we're thrilled this year to have actually instituted a new teacher grant program and to be deploying a centralized fundraising platform for all the schools. And I know that we spoke with the board about that a little bit ago. Tonight, we have several awards that we would like to bestow on a group of amazing art students, teachers, and parent volunteers in our community. So first up, we have the Lucretia Van Horn Memorial Art Award. This fund was created by former CUSD Principal Van Adams and his family in honor of their late grandmother. Lucretia Van Horn was a gifted artist and educator, and the purpose of the endowment executed by CEEF is to celebrate the arts by recognizing outstanding middle school artists in our district. I'd like to introduce Maytal Gautzman on Zoom, maybe. So Maytal is an art teacher at CMS right now, and she managed the contest for CEIF this year. And she is, I hope, going to introduce the 3 winners. Don't see her on Zoom.
I
Okay.
don't see her.
I guess I'll go ahead and introduce the winners, or maybe can I just push her to the end, do you think? Okay, so why don't we go with introducing Brian Block, who I know I saw on Zoom earlier and heard his voice. Brian's been a board member with CEIF since 2017, and he is the current chair for the Patricia A. Lamson Endowment Fund for Reading Literacy Scholarship. And so he is going to speak a little bit about that.
Yes, hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time and appreciate meeting all of you. I'm fortunate this year to be the chairperson of the selection committee for the Patricia A. Lamson Fund for Reading Literacy Scholarship. And this scholarship honors the exemplary instructional efforts for English language arts within CUSD. I'm really excited this year to announce that this year's winner will be Lisa Dable, a 5th grade teacher at Meyerholtz Elementary School. Lisa's application stood out among all of the others for her dedication for supporting student achievement by increasing the accessibility for all students to engage with text at their grade level. I'd like to invite Lisa up to share a few words about her planned use for the grant and the positive impact that it would have for students in CUSD. Congratulations, Lisa.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to the board for inviting me this evening and CEIF for such a generous grant. So I'll just briefly say, while I was applying for the grant, I thought about how much I loved reading when I was a kid and being able to find that perfect reading spot and just enter new worlds where, you know, through magic gardens and mice riding motorcycles under my bed and things like that. And so I want that same joy to be in my classroom. And sometimes, unfortunately, my students don't feel the same joy or draw to reading because of a variety of reasons. And so, like Brian said, I wanted to increase the accessibility for everyone, regardless of their assigned reading levels, so that they could enjoy the same books their peers were enjoying and talk about them and really dive deep into the literature to understand more about our world, different worlds, and to come out perhaps a little bit of a different person. So I chose the Shift 3 staircase of complexity because, as I said, it can be complex for some students, English language learners, or students who may have dyslexia or similar reading problems. So I asked for some handheld MP3 players so that students can listen to the books that their peers may be reading. And in addition to the devices, I requested some Audible book titles that we use a lot in 5th grade for the units of study and for novel studies and so on. So I really appreciate that gift from CEIF, and I know my students will appreciate it as well, to be able to participate in those discussions that maybe they were very reluctant to before because they weren't keeping up with the reading or they didn't understand it all. So I think it'll really open doors for those students. And as one of my favorite children's authors said, Kate DeCamillo, she said, reading should not be presented to children as a chore or duty. It should be offered to them as a precious gift. So thank you so much for this gift for my students.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, so now I'd like to introduce Sanjay Tandon, who has been a board member with CEIF for a little over 3 years now. And he is this year's chair for our 9th Sandy Lou Community Service Leadership Award.
Thank you, Karen. I'm Sanjay Tandon. I am a CEIF board of director, and I'm also a senior director at Applied Materials. It's my distinct pleasure to be the chairperson of the Sandy Lou Community Service Leadership Award. And Sandy Lou Community Service Leadership Award is in memory of Sandy Lou, who used to be a visionary leader of the Blue Hills Elementary School and CUSD community. A loving mother of 2, Sandy passionately dedicated her life to improving the quality of education for all children. So with that being said, we had the pleasure of having 14 nominations in the CUSD community. And the winner of this year's Sandy Lou Community Service Leadership Award for her work in the CUSD 25 and the CUSD United efforts, and also being on the PTA of both Garden Gate and Lawson at some times, and at the present moment as treasurer of Lawson PTA is no other than Sophia Chan. So
thank you. Thank you, Sanjay, the award committee, and Steve, for bestowing me with this great award. I have been very fortunate early on to work with so many parents and parent leaders who has helped me envision the impossible possible. So of course, patience helps a lot as well. I just want to say that the centralized contribution collections portal that CEF has developed, which exists today, is just the beginning of something really amazing. And partnering with CEF was probably the best decision we've ever made. We could not have found a better organization to work with and with long-term sustainability. So I just think this is, for the first time, that the portal really has a great potential to bring all CUSD school together. And finally, I just want to give a big shout out to the team that willingly attended endless Zoom calls with me as we worked and interviewed the various NPOs across CUSD schools. So Grace, Karen, E, Lucy, Cindy, Ellie, Dawn, and Meredith, you guys rock. So thank you again for the award.
thank you.
Congratulations, Sophia.
Still going.
Yep.
I'm going to hand, this is the $1,000 check that Sophia gets to direct to a CUSD program as a recipient of the award this year. And I'm going to hand it to Chris. And Sophia will let us know which program she wants to direct that money to. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, we went a little out of order. So next, I'd like to present this year's Innovative Technology Educator Awards. CEF recognizes the importance of supporting our CUSD teachers in their efforts to explore and develop effective teaching practices, learning strategies, and assessment tools. We hope that this recognition serves as an important means for increasing exploration, creation, and sharing of best practices in the implementation and integration specifically of instructional technology in the classroom. So this year, CUSD has helped us identify 2 winners who will receive a $1,000 grant each for their work. The first winner is Judd Sickler, who I believe I saw on Zoom. And I'll let Judd give a few words on the work that he's been doing in the classroom.
First of all, I want to thank you so much. I am very honored to have received this award. It was, I'm kind of speechless because, you know, I've been a teacher at Cupertino Middle School now for 17 years. I've been a physical educator for 20 years. But most importantly, I've been an educator who passionately believes in student learning and pedagogy and innovative teaching practices. And there have been a few really significant role models along the way that have helped me look at physical education from a completely different lens. The district's been really supportive over the years, encouraging me and inspiring me to really look at different perspectives. And I was lucky enough, this had to be 7-8 years ago, there was a summer institute that Cupertino Union put on. It was a technology institute. The principal at Cupertino at the time encouraged me to attend. And it was one of the most eye-opening experiences for me. It made me really, it humbled me and made me realize that, you know, there are so many more doors that I think I can open in physical education to really enhance student learning, but really make my curriculum more interdisciplinary. And I don't know, it was just to go through this journey, and this process has been pretty fascinating for me. I jumped on the flipped classroom bandwagon, and when I made that commitment, my entire paradigm of teaching and pedagogy changed. And so I'm honored to get this, because I know that a lot of times physical education is ignored or underappreciated because Oftentimes, I feel like I'm not valued as an educator because I'm a PE teacher. But I want to make it very loud and clear that I am committed to Cupertino Union School District and to the students, and I want to enhance their learning experiences. And I am very honored to have received this award. So thank you very, very much. It means a lot to me.
Congratulations, Kristen.
So Judd is our middle school winner, and I'll make sure that he gets his award certificate and check probably tomorrow, Judd. We have an elementary school winner as well, and that is Jennifer Davis from Stockholmeyer. And I believe Jennifer is here.
So much. Thank you, everybody. I want to thank the board. I want to thank CEF. I actually had no idea I was even nominated. So my principal and assistant principal surprised me. It was a great surprise. So I just want to really thank you for your generosity, the recognition, and this opportunity to continue to use technology to reach the community. I do love using technology. I'm not an expert. My students are teaching me all the time. And I think that's really important actually in the classroom as a teacher, to admit to your students and be humble and, know that, well, just let them know that it's okay to not know everything. That is really a big part of my philosophy. And especially, with this day and age, and it's hard to keep up with everything always changing. It's really important for us as adults to model that, let the next generation teach us, and it's a partnership. So what I'm most proud of in the use of technology is this year I've been running a morning SEL class for students who lack self-confidence, self-esteem. They might be nervous with public speaking skills. So I've been working with 4th and 5th graders, and we've been producing a monthly Panda News Network news broadcast to the whole school and community. And it's really been awesome because if you don't know, Stockholmeyer is one of the largest elementary schools. And we've got, different lunch times and different recess times. And it's just as a whole school, we don't always connect. So it's been wonderful just to kind of highlight the bright spots going on in our school and our community. And just even with each other, like we're so busy, I have no idea what's going on in kindergarten or 1st grade or lower grades. So I think that just technology reaching, each other and just sharing and celebrating all the positivity that's been going on campus has been really, really powerful. And also just the domino effect. I've had so many random kids come to me saying, how can I join? How can I sign up? I want to do it. And so it's been hard saying no, like, oh my gosh, we already have like 25 kids, but, hopefully we can maybe bring more teachers on board or, find a way to include more students. That's been really, really powerful. And it's been a lot of fun. So they have no idea that they're building these skills and confidence, and also writing scripts and using creativity. Now we're using a green screen. Mahmoud sent us some wireless microphones. So I really appreciate it's a team effort and making a difference. And just, the world just needs more bright spots. So I feel like this has been really inspiring, a way to spread the joy and to put a spotlight on that. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful. And I hope to continue to do this and maybe bring more teachers on board. So thank you very much.
Congratulations, Jennifer.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to circle back to the Van Horn Art Contest and invite Maital up to give our 3 student winners their awards.
Eventually found the place, but I'm happy to be here. My name is Maytal Gottsman, and I'm an art instructor at Cupertino Middle School, and also the chairperson or organizer for the Lucretia Van Horn Art Award. I'd like to share a little bit about the judging process for the contest. So each year we gather as many teachers as we can from all 5 middle schools to look over the contest entries. This year we had an astounding I think over 90 pieces of artwork, which is the most that we've seen in years. And the theme was Through the Looking Glass. It's always really amazing to see how diverse and accomplished our students are at interpreting the yearly theme. And it is difficult to choose 3 from so many. And the judges have quite a lively discussion in order to pick one from the process. So ultimately, we are confident that we chose work that is highly original, very skillful, and also a creative interpretation of the theme. I would also like to introduce Maya Granford over there. She's the art instructor at Lawson Middle School, where the 1st place and the 3rd place winners attend. Without further ado, should I go 1 to 3 or 3 to 1? Okay. Let's go 3 to 1. So we have Sydney Wong. Here we go. Sydney, are you here? Okay, that's fine. So here is Sydney Wong's artwork. So this is her artist statement that goes along with the theme. This painting represents the manifestation of negative emotions. The character in the painting has experienced a lot of anger and frustration towards many things over the years. Not wanting to vent, her emotions pile up. The dragon only being visible in any mirror that she looks at represents the bottled up emotions that only she can see. I chose mostly the color red for the dragon because the color I associate with anger. Here we go. Awesome. And in 2nd place, we have Ritisha. Come on up. Go ahead and hold up your artwork. Hi, we got a little bit lost together. At least we were lost together, so that's good. I have demonstrated in my artwork the theme of Through the Looking Glass by representing my point of view of what I see when I'm looking at myself in the mirror and how much I've changed over the years. Oftentimes, when I look in the mirror, I see a reflection of a younger self. The cracks in my painting represent broken faith. Many times, things don't go as planned, and in this case, it is faith. A lot of things change over time, specifically within people, both mentally and physically. But changes aren't always a bad thing. They're just like little detours that you have to take in order to reach your desired destination.
Congratulations, Ritisha.
And in 1st place, we have Suhani Nirwal. Hi, Suhani, nice to meet you. And the artist statement goes, kids don't start war, but they are sabotaged the most. Their education, their family, and their beloved. Their well-being and their home is being stripped away from them. Most of all, they turn into children without a childhood. My painting depicts a child looking through the window, suffering the punishment he didn't deserve. Beautiful.
Congratulations, Sahali.
Thank you so much to our winners. So I'll give one more round of applause for all 3.
I'll just mention real quickly, for those of you that don't know, with the Van Horn Art Award, the 1st place winner receives a $250 check. 2nd place winner receives a $100 check, and the 3rd place winner receives a $50 check. So their artwork is just stunning, absolutely beautiful. So thanks for letting us share.
Okay, thank you. Steve. Congratulations to all the winners. Anything you want to?
I just want to commend our parents, our amazing teachers, and our truly talented students. This is a joy for all of us to be here. It's actually really great to be here in person and to see you and to hear you. And thanks for taking the time to participate and be part of Cupertino.
Thank you. Any board members want to make any comments? Yes.
It is nice to be here in person. This is one of the best things we do. And I want to extend hearty congratulations to all of the recipients of awards tonight. But I just want to say a couple of things about CEF. I've been around a long time. I was here at CEF's inception in 1984. I've had the privilege of working with Karen for probably 20 years, maybe. And CEF has been an amazing partner, like Sophia said. Over the years, they've supported kids, they've supported teachers, they've provided professional development. They've done awards for spectacular work among teachers and students. And now we have this new shared, whatever, I don't even know what we're calling it, but an opportunity to share in fundraising, which is going to be awesome, I think, for our schools. So I just want to publicly say a huge thank you to Karen and all the board members and CEF for all the wonderful work you've done over the years. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, I think thanks, fellas, on behalf of both. Thanks, Karen, for coming and sharing this. Okay, shall we move to the next one then? Thank you. We have communication employee organization. Do you have anyone, Erin?
Yes, we do. We have CEA President Kai Brown.
Okay. Hey, Kai, welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, good, Kai. Go ahead.
First of all, let me also extend my congratulations to the CEF Award winners. Awesome job. Congratulations. As we reach what I like to call the home stretch of the school year, I'd like to take this time to thank you guys, the school board, Superintendent Yao, who I wish was here, the district bargaining team, and the district bargaining team for settling on compensation for this in the coming school year. Thank you for showing that you value your employees and for making them a priority. It's my hope that we can finish up negotiations sooner than later and get those checks in the mail. As we do go on with the negotiations, I urge the district to prioritize providing our teachers with adequate preparation time so they can support the district's strategic plan to provide personalized learning for all our students. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. Good night.
Thank you, Kai. Do we have any other organization?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go to the next one, the public comment. Here, basically the public comment is for the items which are not in the agenda. Okay, so what we do is the first 20, we reserve 20 minutes maximum for this, and if it goes beyond that, it will be at the end of the meeting. Okay, end of the agendized items. So how many speakers we have, Erin?
We have 4.
4. Okay, so we'll have 3 minutes each, actually, for each of the speakers. Please go ahead.
Sure. The first speaker we have is Nithya Vijayakumar and Girl Scouts. I believe you are here in person, so you can make your way to the podium.
Dear,
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Dear CUSD board, we are junior Girl Scouts from Cupertino with members from Ragnar, Faria, and McAuliffe elementary schools. We have seen that there is too much plastic wasted in the hot lunches of the district. It would help the earth and future generations to reduce the amount of plastic used and use reusable resources for our hot lunch. In every child's hot lunch, there's a plastic fork, plastic straw, and a paper napkin, which are all covered up in a plastic wrap. This is a lot of plastic going to waste. In the Cupertino Union School District, there are around 15,000 students. If we estimate that around 2/3 of the district takes hot lunch every day, which is around 10,000 students, and there are 2 plastic utensils in each plastic sack, then every school year, around 3.6 million pieces of plastic are wasted. We can easily prevent this by changing the materials used in making the utensils and the utensils bags. As leaders of 26 schools, you have the power to make a significant impact on pollution. There are other materials that are eco-friendly which can be used to provide cutlery for the schools. For example, wood and bamboo, to name a few. It may be slightly more expensive, but we think our earth is much more valuable than a few $1,000s. We urge you on this Earth Day to consider what power you have to reduce plastic trash and make our planet better. So please consider using environmentally friendly cutlery for our hot lunches and do your part to save the earth. You'll help us as humans in the present and in the future. We have not inherited the earth from our parents. We have just borrowed it from our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll go to the next speaker, please.
The next speakers we have are Joyce Fortune, Richard Altmaier, and Tara Dowell. If you could please raise your hands. Joyce, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to speak. I am the parent of a fifth grader at Lincoln Elementary School headed to Kennedy Middle School this year. California State Assembly Bill 328 mandates that middle schools shall not start classes before 8:00 a.m. starting in the fall of 2022. Most of the middle schools in the Cupertino Union School District have a 0 period that starts substantially earlier than 8:00 a.m. Kennedy Middle School's 0 period starts at 7:25. Excuse me. The district claims that this is legal because only a small percentage of students arrive before 8:00 a.m. However, special education students and English language learners must arrive and attend 0 period if they wish to receive federally mandated support services and also take an elective. This is an equity issue. At-risk students are being singled out to come in early. Cupertino Middle School's schedule meets both goals of providing support services to students and starting after 8:00 a.m. I would respectfully request that the district seriously consider shifting the other middle schools to the same schedule as CMS or find another way of meeting both goals for the fall of 2022. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Joyce.
Richard, go ahead.
Yes, I apologize. My camera failed today, so I'm audio only. We hear about multiculturalism, but we don't hear about American culture. What is American culture with respect to schools? I say this, it is our school's job to teach cultural elements which are critical for success within the broader American work culture and civic leadership. Our schools prepare an educated workforce. Our schools are not striving to teach religion or in-home social behavior or hobbies like fishing or knitting. Some things are in scope and some things are out of scope. American culture with respect to an educated workforce at the K-12 level certainly includes basic skills of reading, writing, reasoning, science, and math, time management skills of organizing work, planning a project, being on time, becoming an expert in at least base technical skills for the workplace and preparing to dive deeper, either in professional apprenticeship or in college, study habits and test-taking skills, comfortable with teamwork balanced with competition. Some students will be preparing for STEM fields and achieving an earned expertise. Such expertise is rare enough to be highly paid. Some students will be aiming at professional non-college fields. Some pay well, some don't. If someone says the country culture I come from doesn't value being on time, so in this case, we expect and demand our schools to change that belief. To be in the workforce in America is to be on time. We do not accept or expect our schools to allow a student to believe being late is okay. CRT people say any culture is valid and any behavior is valid. I always reject this. There is no such path for our student success. If someone says STEM is privileged and is bad, and in this case, we know STEM is critical for modern civilization, and such a statement fails to encourage a student to develop their skills. We don't accept such a position in our schools, and we expect students to respect expertise. CRT people say STEM is racist. Reject this. It is a bigoted belief that students of color cannot learn. If someone says STEM is cutthroat and competitive, well, we know the workplace has competition, and we expect ethical and rule following competition. We know companies and products will fail because no one buys them. So we teach our students rule following and ethical behavior and to recognize our winners and losers. and for the student to seek skill building where they can achieve some wins. CRT people say STEM is white supremacy. Reject this. It is a bigoted belief that students of color cannot compete. I urge our school board to issue a standing memo to every school principal reminding them of the school's duty to teach and practice American culture for success in the workplace and in civic leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Tara, go ahead.
Thank you, Board. The topic that I would like to speak to that is not on the agenda is the subject of recalls. I understand that for the third time in less than 12 months, trustees of the CUSD board are being targeted for recall by the same group. And while the tools of democracy provide the opportunity for this, I would like to respectfully appeal to our community to consider the question, just because you can, does this mean you should? I understand that there are members of the community who feel that their interests are not being represented and who feel dissatisfied with decisions that have been made. However, after 2 failed attempts to get community support, please consider that there are more positive ways of moving forward. Instead of continuing to attack those who are willing to engage in civic service, there are 3 positions on the Board of Trustees that will be on the electoral ballot in November. Please put your name forward. You have the opportunity to step up and lead. I appeal to you, run your campaign, show the community that you have the credentials and can represent the interests of the community as a whole. Engage in a democratically elected process. As one of the 74,000 registered voters in CUSD, it is unclear to me why we would take away any public funds to support a recall when we have 3 open seats in the November election. Recalls are not only distracting, but they are also divisive in the community. These last few years of the pandemic have been hard, and it is time to move forward positively. Our children learn from us what they see and hear us doing. The time spent gathering signatures, sending emails, and making posters for recalls could be spent engaging in one of the many amazing enrichment programs that our schools offer. Our schools are great because of the awesome parents who make a decision to volunteer to copy papers for teachers, volunteer to be the classroom parent, volunteer to help at the book fair. So if you have time to give, please give your time to be present for our children in school, at school, and in the community. These are the things that matter, and research data supports it. Thank you for your consideration today.
Thank you, Tara. Erin, do we have anyone? Any more?
That was our final submitted comment.
Thanks, Erin. Then we'll go to the next one. Item number 5. I think, Chris, you're going to talk, right?
Thank you. Item 5 is a public hearing notification. Tonight, later on, we'll be presenting some information. And again, for information tonight in regards to the adjustments to our district's developer fees. Just briefly, every other year, the state allocation board allows school districts to revisit their developer fees. And in the process of that, districts update their developer fee impact studies. And so tonight, attached to our board item is the recent developer fee study that was done, as well as an update, thereby justifying the increase in what the state allocation board is proposing. And so just as a reminder, developer fees are fees that are assessed when there are additions or changes to existing property owners. As an example, as a home, if I was to reconstruct my home or add on to my home, I have to pay a developer fee related to that. And then finally, the developer fee itself is actually split between us and the high school district. So the high school district receives, I think 40%. I think we receive 60% of the total developer fee rate that the homeowner would pay on a per square foot basis. So again, I'm just introducing the public hearing piece at this time.
Thanks, Chris. So do you have Do you have people?
We do not have any submitted comments.
Okay.
So you'll want to though open the public hearing and then we'll need to close the public hearing just in case someone raises their hand.
So we can keep it open now
Yep.
and we'll keep it till end of the,
No, we'll just open it now.
okay, I'll just keep it open now.
You have to
You
officially
have to
open it.
officially open. it.
Okay. Okay,
Perfect.
okay, I'm officially opening this for the public comment. Do you have anyone?
I do not see any hands raised. And there were no public comment cards submitted for this item.
Okay, so.
So
then-
we'll officially open it. I believe Nancy probably recorded 6:45, and then we'll
Okay,
close.
I'll close then as we are not having any more comments from the public. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chris. So I'll go to then the next item. That's a consent, and in consent we have the first one. It's an Apple one, and then the rest. So can we have a separate motion for 6.1 and another thing?
I move to approve item 6.1.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah.
I second.
Okay, thanks, fellas. And can we have a roll call? Yeah.
Ready?
Yep.
Trustee Lou,
Aye.
Trustee Cunningham,
Abstain
Oh.
and recuse.
Trustee Vogel.
Aye.
Trustee Leong.
Aye.
Trustee Madhato.
Aye. Okay. So the next one then, can we have 6.2 to 6.16?
So moved 6.2 to 6.16 on consent.
Thanks, Laurie. And the second, please.
I'll second.
Thanks, Jerry. And can we have a roll call?
Trustee Lou,
Aye.
Trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
Trustee Vogel.
Aye.
Trustee Leong.
Aye.
Trustee Madhato.
Aye. Thank you. So the consent items are over. Now it's all information and presentation. So let's go one by one. 7.1 school updates.
Great. So that is me.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay,
Rebecca.
perfect.
Good.
So I'm going to be providing school updates, talking to you about the progress of our core transition advisory team and the work that is being done at our closing and consolidating school sites, as well as our receiving school sites. So we're going to just quickly review the timeline. We'll talk about the work group process, which is our core advisory team's work. I think at the last board meeting, it was asked that we come back and share what are our accomplishments, what have we done so far, and what is sort of on the horizon. We'll talk about spring and summer engagement, and then we'll post some questions at the end. So just really, really briefly, you've seen this slide before. The arrow has moved. We are in the process of, we have one final meeting of our core transition advisory meeting. One of the things that we will do at that meeting is we will talk about how do we determine our measures of success? How will we know that we're successful in the fall? And whether or not the committee has a desire to meet in August to review progress, to talk about what were the successes, and to identify if there are any additional needs. In addition, our school sites have begun their own site team meetings. That's happening at both our closing and consolidating schools, as well as our receiving schools. So next slide. This is just a review of sort of how we chunked the work of our work groups, although our final two meetings, the one we had just recently and then the one we'll have in a couple weeks, we're actually doing together. We're actually not doing it in a work group format. But we've talked about what are the end of year experiences, what should be summer experiences and start of school experiences, and then also what possibilities are there for some sort of a fall check-in. So I just want to highlight accomplishments, things that are completed or I'll say nearly completed. And so one of the things, and some of these will be reviews for you because I've probably mentioned them in previous updates. But one is our wonderful PTA leadership, Don Ying, is supporting and coaching our school sites, Regnart, Meyerholtz, and Muir, all of which do have PTA organizations. She's helping them close down their accounts, making sure that they take care of their fiduciary responsibilities, and just guiding them step by step through the process as needed. In addition, in March with our core transition advisory team, we had a work group that focused on staff engagement. That group worked on a process for articulation cards and class building agreements that would be supported at the closing and consolidating school sites, so that schools that currently have the children are able to fill out information about students, group them in balanced groups that then get merged at the new school sites. And then the two principals or the principals involved will look at those class configurations at the end. This was presented to the entire group. The teachers really had a strong hand in guiding the process. It was presented to the entire core group and then all principals that were involved. And it's great that they came to an agreement that schools have been working on their articulation cards, and they plan on spending potentially some of the May Learning Day doing some of the groupings either at the receiving sites or at the closing sites. In addition, we had at the beginning of the first transition advisory team meeting, there were all sorts of questions. We brainstormed all sorts of questions that were coming up. It actually helped us shift our focus a little bit with our core team. We did create an internal FAQ that was finalized and shared with our core advisory team and also our schools, so that they have all of the information they need in regards to the logistics of closing, consolidating, et cetera. Starting in March, some school sites before, but March and April, all of our receiving school sites are actually hosting parent coffees. They're hosting parent coffees that incorporate their new communities, and then they're also hosting parent coffees just for their new families in case those questions look different. Next slide. March and April, as I shared, sites have started and already have formed their site transition advisory teams. Some of our representatives from our core teams have asked to be part of those teams. Some are not participating. We have on those teams classified, certificated school leaders, and then a variety of either parents from the community or from the leadership and site teacher representatives. In April, all of our principals at receiving school sites went out to the school sites that are closing and consolidating, where they would be receiving kids from, and spent time on campus at lunch meeting and greeting students. In addition, on April 12th, our teachers from closing and consolidating sites, as well as our SDC teachers that are being moved to new sites, spent time on their new campuses. One of the things that came up at one of the board meetings, I believe Lori brought it up, was what are we doing for our programs, our SDC programs that are moving to the new sites? We folded those principals into our principal team meetings. And they are looking at how do they provide, and they're already doing it, how do they provide similar experiences for their teachers, which they're doing, and how they're providing similar experiences for their students and families. So that incorporates how do they message them like the other schools are. They're either having kids come to their campuses, depending on how small the group is, or they have gone out to the campuses and into the classrooms. And one of the schools is actually, because it's a very small group, I think they're working on a field trip where the SDC students will be coming to the new campus in the spring. It's easy to do with a small group of students. It is impossible to do with a large group of students. Not impossible, really challenging. May Learning Day, all of our school sites will be receiving new staff, new teachers. Due to the closing and consolidation process, will spend the morning on their campus, on the new campus, doing team building. So that doesn't just happen at Lincoln and Blue Hills, Eaton and Dilworth. It will be happening at Faria, where some of the teachers will be going. It will be happening at Regnart. It will be happening at Faria, at Garden Gate, and at Stevens Creek. And maybe Eaton. I think Eaton is part of it. I think one teacher is moving there. In addition to that, Mahmoud and his team have been working diligently on a revised street locator. So if you go onto our website currently, you type in an address, and that address happens to fall in the neighborhood of Muir. what should pop up, and we notice every so often we miss something, but what should pop up, it would say that for this school year, Mura is your school. Yet we're closing, that it'll be closed, and you have the option of these schools, you'll work with student assignment. What Mahmood is doing is we have a new street address locator that will show what the main school is, what the, we'll call default school, but what the alternate choices are. And so he's working out a couple different quirks on that or kinks on that, and that should be launched pretty soon, I believe. In addition to that, our library media clerks have been working with the library media mentor, Allison's department, and myself to come up with a distribution plan of library books at the closing school sites. I'll go into more detail on this next bullet. The asterisk should have been up a little bit higher, but the core advisory team has come up with agreements on what needs to be included in any spring and summer engagement activities. So one of the conversations we had was, are these options? Do we get to choose from them or menus? Are we choosing all of them? And for the spring activities, they will all be chosen. And so I will walk through that in a moment. In addition, Aaron and Mahmood, I think probably Aaron a little bit more, is working on finalizing a paper map that shows the new areas and choices. So you know that when we look at our school map, it shows boundaries. They're working on how do we do that with modified regions. It's a little bit more challenging, but they are working on a schematic for that. March, April, and May. For some of these schools that are listed, it happened in March, and for others, it's happening in April and May. One of the things that we realized with the change of high school start times, there needed to be a conversation in the communities of Lincoln and Dilworth based on the start times for the elementary schools. And so Lincoln began that process in March. Ann Crott met with her staff and looked at a variety of scenarios, a variety of start and end times, gathered input, pros and cons, did that same activity with her community after the board in Fremont Union High School District had finalized the decision to move to an 8:30 start. And based on that information, Ann has reviewed that data with the district office, and we are recommending an 8:10 start time on the Lincoln campus for the fall. That means students will be able to arrive on campus at approximately 7:55. We're looking at potentially doing some sort of extended drop-off where if parents wanted, they could drop them off at 7:45. School at Kennedy begins at 8:25, I believe, with the exception of 0 period. And then the high school is 8:30, and I hope I have my numbers correct. Dilworth is beginning that same process with their community. So Stephen is beginning to have a conversation with his staff in regards to what the middle school start time is, what the high school start time, and looking at a variety of scenarios. Also, he will then take it to his community after that. The next slide. So these are the spring and summer engagement activities that were brainstormed and agreed upon by the core transition advisory team. What we hope that they provide is enough of a clear parameter, but not so that it has to be identical. And so one of the things was site visits by receiving principals. That happened, and that was identical. Each school will have an opportunity to come up with a closing activity the last week of school that allows for goodbye to staff members that may not be moving to the new school. The way that happens at the school sites may vary, but every school site will have some sort of closing opportunity. Principals certainly talk about what they're doing so that we can make sure there is equity in that. In addition to that, all school sites will create some sort of semi-permanent or transportable artifact that will either stay at the school site or move with the school site. There will be a new school information document with a welcome message that will be given to all incoming students. It will provide information at a glance. It's a very abbreviated part or form of our website. Our website has all of the information that they need, but it was important to our core advisory committee that they had something that was tangible, maybe a 2-pager. So we'll actually be finalizing information for that, and maybe even the template at our next core advisory meeting. Our receiving schools will host meet and greets with their communities in May or June, so the new communities. And then our closing school sites will be giving some sort of a gift souvenir to all of the students. In the summer, what the core advisory, the site-based teams are working on is welcome messages to all students, teacher and staff bios, hopefully photos on websites, so families can go on and just see the faces and learn about the teachers at the new school sites. Actually, we're recommending that of all of our schools. We're looking into, and so these ones have not been solidified, but we're looking into what could a self-guided school tour look like on a campus over the summer, should a family want to have some sort of a map or walk around the campus. What could that look like? School sites are working on identifying liaison volunteers who parents can contact. And then finally, parent organizations meeting sometime or organizing some sort of summer meet and greet. So it might be a park day of some sort. And that's it. So I will turn it over to you for questions or comments.
Thanks, Leslie. Let's go for first clarification, questions or comments. Who wants to start?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It looks like a very comprehensive plan. And
Thanks.
Thanks.
oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Who wants to go next? You want to?
Just echoing it, so much information and so much work has been done. So much props and kudos to all the different teams that are working on at the different sites. I had just one, the adjusting the start time is interesting to me. And it made me wonder about not just these particular schools, but you know, we have some other schools near other high schools. Like, so for example, I'm thinking Sedgwick and Cupertino High. Like, will there be any sort of, and I know it's not really related to this, but I guess it just, like, that's what got me thinking about this.
So, yeah, so we've looked at it. We've looked at it at our other school sites. These are the ones that seem to be the ones that stand out to us most at this time. We also know that as we move into the next school year, as you continue as a board to discuss middle schools and start times, that we will need to look at this again. And so the schools are aware that at this point in time, since middle schools will not be, we don't believe, we're not sure, but we don't believe they will change start times for next year, that this potentially could be a 1-year shift. But we believe it gives enough flexibility to allow for lessening traffic impact. For example, we were out at, Chris and I were at Monte Vista yesterday, Monte Vista and Lincoln, and we were talking about the start and end times, and Monte Vista was like, oh, that will be perfect. So if you're starting then and we're starting now, there will not be an issue on that road, which is the most highly impacted. So, you know, I think we feel good about the decision for Lincoln next year.
And then regarding Lincoln, you had mentioned possibly extending I know we have the general 15 minutes before school starts where there's some supervision, but if we extend that another 10 minutes, would that be, I don't know if that's been discussed yet. Is that kind of like parent volunteers, or is that staff, or is that not really at that level?
It's not quite at that level. It probably would not be parent volunteers. We'd either need to work with a contracted employee of some sort, so maybe a La Garza or something like that, or we would have to work with staff, although then that infringes on their duty day. So we'd have to discuss what would compensation look like for that. So we're beginning a brainstorming process in regards to what are some of those options for families. We also believe, though, if our families get their kids there 15 minutes before the school, they will have zero problem in the neighborhood. The later they push it, obviously the more impact anywhere.
Yeah, and that's the case at any, that's the case at all of our schools.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that last 10 minutes or 5 minutes before school starts. Okay, I think those were my main questions, so I'll yield my time.
Thanks. Yeah, well, no. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I did want to say thank you for the SBC piece. You got to that before I even got a chance to finish writing it down. So thank you, Leslie. So on the revised street locator, I think I understand the way that's going to be implemented, but on the revised maps, what it sounds like is it's going to show, for example, Dilworth as the designated school for Muir and Meyer Holtz, but then we'll have some other color shading or asterisk or something that allows for the choice to Blue Hills. That's where you're thinking.
That's exactly it. So there'll be a color shading, potentially dotted lines. I don't know, Erin, do you want to explain the vision? You want me to
It's
try?
okay if we're not ready yet.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You can go ahead. I mean, yeah.
So there'll be some color shading around the default school areas. There'll be some dotted lines to show the larger boundary, and that's really default school. There'll also be some asterisks, and the asterisks will be identified in a legend, we believe, down below that shows that if you fall in this designated region, but there's an asterisk where the smaller region where you live, let's say the original Regnart neighborhood, you do have the choice to either go to Lincoln or Blue Hills, depending on what the color coding is.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can run by an iteration to the board, get some feedback. For us, the most important piece, because we as a group use those paper maps, those flat maps. Our parent community doesn't. Our parent community really types in their address, and they just need to know, what is the school that I have been assigned to? Or in this case, what are the options? What are the choices that I have?
Right. Okay. And I know Stacy already met with our local realtors association, so they're all prepped on the fact that that's coming as well, right?
Say that again.
Stacy had met with our local realtor association.
thank you.
back
Yes.
Sometime around the new
Yep.
year, I think,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're all prepped to know that that's
They-
change is coming as well.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can go on the website now with our old locator, and they could plug in addresses to see. And yes, they do know that the rest of it's coming.
Okay. Yeah. And then for the Lincoln start time, I wanted to follow up just a little bit more on, I think the thread Sylvia was going towards. So I understand like it was multifactorial in terms of the layers you went through, and like this allows for families with older kids who help walk younger siblings to school to do that and still make it to their own school in time for the start, et cetera. But are we doing this knowing that when we do sort of round on our discussion around middle schools, that we may need to revisit these?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So as long as that was a part of the conversation.
That was
then
part of
we're-
the conversation.
Okay.
The
right.
other thing that we talked about, and if you advertise start and end times, and then we determine that those start and end times, it's not working. You have the ability to change start and end times. It's not something you love to do because parents work their world around the start and end times of school. But if we were to determine in the fall that something just wasn't working the way we wanted, and we really felt the urgency to make a shift, let's say at the elementary school site, Ed Code says you can do it. You have to give X number of days. It's either 30 or 60-day notice to the community. And so, but the school sites do know that this is a conversation for this year based on what we know, based on the start times that we know. And if the start times were to shift anywhere else, that we do need to go back and revisit the whole thing.
And can you remind me, I know we've done some other shift in start times for other reasons in the last several years. Maybe it's been a couple of years. It's probably been maybe 3-4 years since we've done a round of them, but we're not shifting substantially more or less than we have in prior times to meet other needs, right?
No, for Lincoln, I mean, they've experienced a pretty big shift if you look at their
Over time.
trajectory. They used to start, I think, at 9. Now they are at 8:30. We explored, do they go to 8:50? Do they go to, we knew we couldn't go to 8:20 because of the start time at Kennedy. And so 8:10 was really the best that we could do also to accommodate. We really do believe families want to get their little ones onto campus. They want their big kids to maybe help their little ones get onto campus. And then the nice thing is they could drop all kids off. Some could go to the high school, some could go to middle school. They know their little ones are safe.
Right. Okay. I think that was it. Thank you. This is a great update, and I'm excited to see sort of the spring and summer work play out. So thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Yeah,
Jerry.
thanks. Yeah, I had a bunch of questions about the visualizations. I think Lori covered that. Be curious to see how you end up indicating all the choices we have. I'm wondering if, in addition to us, if we still have the district advisory committees that are active, that might be something that would be good to test with those parents. So just a suggestion. Very comprehensive plan and accomplishments. I'm very happy with it. I'll just mention at Lincoln, there is a time capsule they need to take out of the ground, I think this year. And so I was talking to Mrs. Kropp over there, and she had the idea. And so she hasn't promised to do it, so I'm not announcing anything here, but potentially involving some of the Regnart students in the spring in sort of figuring out, because they were talking about maybe we're taking a time capsule and maybe putting one in to commemorate the start of the new school. And so that seemed like a good pattern of potentially involving some of the incoming students and the families a little earlier. So I'll just kind of mention that. It seemed like a good idea to me. The question I had, maybe I don't know if it's in scope here, is around some of the facilities. So, at Lincoln, we're getting another, I think, 300 or so in, and Dilworth 200. In terms of things like play structures, has there been any discussions of looking at whether we could do something more there? And I just remember this because I know Lincoln lost half of its upper grade play structure a couple of years ago in the last. So if you look at that little sort of sandbox, half of it's empty and there's a play structure. And I just think about, it would seem like there'd still be time to put some of that in. I don't know if it's in consideration, but I'll maybe just kind of submit that for consideration by the administration to see if we could sort of get more kids in there, making sure that some of these facilities like play structures, I don't know what else, if we could do something there, at least see if there's a need there. That'd be great.
Right. And Anne, when we were at one of the walkthroughs, actually brought up the conversation about the play structure and that missing piece. And so it's something that we'll need to consider. I'll have to go back to the team to determine where are we in the process.
Sure.
Dilworth has a pretty sufficient size playground. But those are things that when we walk the sites, Chris and myself and Dana and Jason have walked the sites numerous times. And so we talk about what are the needs of the campus based on the growth.
Right.
Parents are worried about picnic tables. We have told them that don't worry about picnic tables. They either already have enough or we will be able to move picnic tables to sites to accommodate. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Satish.
Well, thanks, Jerry. Okay, but I think most of the questions have been covered, and it's really great. A lot of updates and a lot of details. A couple of things. One is I know that we did not specifically talk about traffic part of it here. What are the major changes done now for the? Is it only the time part we have done for the Lincoln? Specifically, I'm talking because Lincoln was one of the biggest concern area, right? Like with the Regnart coming in. I know the time change with, and again, Monta Vista changes and everything accommodated. And this is really great, but what else has been done around that?
So I think it was the last time I presented, I sort of gave an update on where we were with the work with the city of Cupertino and with the city of San Jose. The only additional thing that I would share is that we did actually do a walkthrough with the city of San Jose, and we're waiting for them to produce the task list. They had some suggestions for things that they could do on the streets and things that we could do in regards to the drop-off area. Stephen is working with the Traffic Safety Committee in San Jose on he's trying to get a parent that would be a lead, but trying to get a traffic safety valet program going and working with the kids in the late spring, summer, so that it can be launched in the fall. City of Cupertino, we're continuing to work with them on just looking at the infrastructure on the roads and on campus. We're waiting to hear back from them in regards to some Apple grant funding that they received and whether or not they could help us with on-campus projects, but we've not heard back from them on that. Not because they're not working on it, but they've got some other things to look at related to that. We were walking the campus the other day talking about a bike path in the area that is shared between Monte Vista and Lincoln. And so they're going to work on some drawings related to that to see what could it look like, a path that would get kids not riding through actually the Monte Vista traffic pattern where they actually have staff and trucks driving, and also where staff drives at Lincoln. And then the city is working on some signage at the backside. I want to say it's Presidio area, Presidio Fort Baker area. So what I can do is I can bring back sort of more concrete items and just sort of show you on maps at the next meeting.
Correct. And especially like, this fall, what is going to be and what is in the future kind of. Right?
Okay.
Thanks, Leslie. That's good. The question about Blue Hills modernization, will it be completed by?
Which one?
Blue Hills.
Blue Hills.
Blue Hills with
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It will be completed in the time frame that we have said before.
Okay. And the last one is the rest of the assets, right? Like in this closing schools, like, a lot of stuff you said that will move along with the kids or, to the newer place, the receiving schools, but there could be a lot of stuff left out, right? In the closing schools, for example, Regnat or, such. So what we do typically, we bring it back to some common place or is there something or I know
Right.
probably I'm asking more, you wouldn't have thought about that, but do we have?
Right. So our first priority is to make sure that we get what we need to get to the new sites and the new classrooms.
Okay.
Some of the new classrooms that are being moved into actually have furniture and all the things that you would need in a standard classroom. Some actually don't. And so that will be Dana and team's first priority. And then moving the rest of the stuff regarding technology, Mahmoud and his team has a plan regarding moving the libraries, et cetera. And then we will need to look at what is left in regards to furniture. Our hope is that the stuff is gone, but the big items such as furniture, et cetera, and then we will work through that plan. I don't know if Chris has any other updates regarding if printers are left, if tables are left, et cetera, on school sites that have been closed.
I had a quick comment. I mean, as we're planning out the moves and doing all this, I think the school sites, the staff themselves have started to look at what items they have there. And I think all of the schools are taking this as an opportunity to maybe help purge out and clean house a little bit. So in the process of this, we have put dumpsters at the closing schools so that allows them the time. They're doing it a little bit at a time, but between now and the last day of school, they'll have the ability to dispose of things that require us to go through the process to actually surplus, like broken furniture and all those things. We are storing those to the side, and then Dana and her team will dispose of it once we bring a request to the board to surplus those items. So I think that we're cleaning up as much as we can and identifying the things that we have to move. And then I think what Leslie referred to, at some point at the very end, there will be residual stuff that is left, and we will, as a district, need to decide what to do with it, whether or not it stays there for future uses at those sites, or potentially if there's a tenant that moves in, we may have to move some of those things out.
Thanks, Chris.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, please.
The only thing I didn't hear on your list was curriculum supplies, the science kits, the things like that. I assume all of that is going to be apportioned out based on the new classrooms too?
Correct. The teachers are actually taking that with them.
Okay.
So they will take all of their curriculum with them. If they are in a different grade level, they would help us box up the curriculum, label it accurately, get to their new location, and we will make sure that the curriculum is ready for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had one more just comment. I'm sensitive to one of the public comments about the start time at Kennedy and the students that are maybe more needy, having that early 0 period. So I'm hoping as you look at start times that you'll consider that.
Thanks. Any more comments from the board? Okay, then any public comments?
There are no public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. That's a good update. So we'll go to the next one then. So surplus property update, Chris.
Yes, I'd like to welcome up our chairperson, Richard Lowenthal of our 7-Eleven Surplus Committee, and Richard will provide an update for the board.
Thanks, Chris. There should be a slide deck to present. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm Richard Lowenthal. I chair the 7-Eleven committee. Our charter is to determine the next use of the Montebello site, the Meyerholtz site, and the Regnart site going forward. We're just a bit of a recap. We're looking to sell the Montebello site, and our committee is looking into the issues involved in that and what requirements we have on the property as we sell it. Couple of issues that came up on that. There was a deed issue that said if we don't use it for schools, we have to give it back to the original owner, but through our attorneys, we determined that's no longer an issue. It's got a historic property designation at Montebello, but we've decided we'll recommend selling the property with that designation attached and let the buyer deal with it. And then we're looking at renting out the Regnart and Meyerholtz sites and the issues there. And again, we've looked at some of the details. The only real constraint, we have a agreement with the city of Cupertino to maintain the fields at Regnart, so that'll be a concern that we will pass on to the board and for their consideration. Moving down to number 4, kind of the new thing on number 4 here is that we may determine that the recommendation is to make one of the rental school sites, Regnart or Meyerholtz, partially surplus, which is we've cleared with the attorneys that that's a possibility because we may move some of the district activities to one of those sites, but we could use the rest of the site for to rent out for other purposes. Just on the legal definition, we're basically looking for what will return us the highest fiscal return on renting out these properties and selling the one. But we're going to constrain it by something that says that it's market supportable, meaning to us that we've reached out to the community, we've heard their concerns and made that part of our recommendations to the board. Moving down to 5, we determined the district office requirements, and we have considered some of the requirements of the central kitchen, and we may recommend to the school board that they move the district office onto one of the properties. There was a concern that we didn't have much time to make that decision as the lease for the Mary Avenue site was up for renewal, but the landlord has generously let us put off that decision for a year. So that we have time to consider vacating the Mary Avenue site and moving the district office to either Meyerholtz or Regnart. Let's see, 6, we covered that. 7, so we looked at the zoning of the property in that will constrain the use of the property if we don't use it for education. And so we understand that we came to determine that we will recommend to the district to not change the current zoning, which is really for 2 reasons. One is that it takes a long time, and if we want to rent out the property, it could delay as much as a year as we as we secured new zoning from the city of San Jose or the city of Cupertino. So we're going to recommend that we maintain current zoning and whatever we might accommodate with a lease be something that is compatible with current zoning. We also, if you look at the second motion there, we will recommend that the district preserve the school sites and as potentially future education sites, and that we, in the rental agreements, we require that any facility modifications be approved by the state architect and the district, so that if we decide to return one of these sites to being used as a school, there won't be changes that we have to reverse. Item 8, so we've done an extensive outreach and notification through social media and through the press, because in our next meeting on May 3rd, we're going to make it an hour longer than usual, so that we sincerely are inviting the public to come and give us their views about the future uses of these sites. And we're labeling that a public hearing and allowing enough time so anyone from the public who wishes to speak can. We, especially in our notification, we reached out to not only the school community, but also the neighborhood community, because they may have views about how these campuses could be used in the future and how it might impact them for things like parking and traffic. So that will happen May 3rd at 6 p.m. So that we reach out to the public and get their views. And then to be completed after that, of course, is our recommendation to you. We're on track to complete the recommendation by the end of May. And that's my report. And I can entertain any questions you might have.
Thanks, Richard. Let's go in the same order. Liz, do you want to start?
No, I attended that meeting. Thank you, Richard. It was well done.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Thanks, Billy. Okay.
Richard, I was just curious. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I know that, at least in kind of notes and presentation, it's Meyerholtz, Regnar, and Montebello that's being discussed, but are you also looking at some of the other sites, especially as with regard to the district office being moved? Like looking at the TRC or looking at Luther, those kinds of things, or is that not really in the scope of what you guys are doing?
We will be considering moving other district functions along with the district office. We have other functions that are at other sites, including, for instance, the kitchen. And so we'll be looking at all those possibilities, moving to either Regnard or Meyerholtz. We don't look at other campuses, just those two. But we will be looking at any function that might free up space in other parts of the district function. So we'll be looking at broadly.
Thanks. Lori here. John.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for the update. So you mentioned Montebello and the recommendation is likely just going to be to let the designation stand. From what you guys have been able to gather, are there any implications that we should start to think through or go make ourselves educated on that you run into with that historical designation?
No, I don't think so. Our stance at this point will be to sort of notify the buyer that those are in place and let them deal with it. These are designations that the county of Santa Clara put on the property. They are a little bit unclear in their designation. They only talked about a subset of the property, I think a 1 acre portion. And It's also not entirely clear if it's the building or the school itself. But rather than wrestle with these issues, we're going to, our recommendation will be to leave them to the buyer to deal with the issues.
So it would just be something that we'd handle in disclosures, essentially.
We will disclose, of course, that requirement, but not resolve it. We'll leave it to the buyer to resolve.
Okay. And then on the list of acceptable zoning and leaving the others intact, I think we discussed last time, but just want to reiterate, there's no concerns with either the public building, current designation of public building for Regnar or the current designation of residential housing for Meyerholtz that would keep us from having another educational agency, for example, come in and use those buildings as school sites or
No.
things like that.
Yeah, that's not a concern. Any educational purposes, the kinds of activities that we rent other parts of the district to now would all be acceptable on an education site. So currently, any education purposes that we want to use can be done with our current zoning. The place that we would get crosswise with, for instance, someone inquired about using the Regnart site for a retail service, and that would require, in my view, would require a zoning change, which we will not pursue. So that will constrain some of to whom the district could rent the property. But any education purposes, if you look now, we have a dance school, we've got a Montessori school, we've got a French American school at our other campuses. All of those kind of uses would still be acceptable at these sites.
Okay. Thank you for reviewing that again. And then this may be more of a question for Chris, but with the sort of stipulation that anything that a future tenant might do would have to be DSA approved, is there a time limit associated with those DSA approvals? For example, at some point, DSA must have approved structures at Sarah or at Luther or, in the future at some of these other sites. Is there a time limit by which those DSA approvals, or is it like once you've got one, you're sort of grandfathered in perpetuity?
So in regards to DSA, DSA certifies the completion of the project. That is in place until a future project is brought before DSA that would involve any changes to the conditions of the building. But also related to your question, I believe, is probably bringing things up to codes, because imagine back when Sarah and Luther were in operation, they were buildings that were met the current codes at that time, and it's been some time since. And so that will probably be the only thing that, any tenant that comes in would have to deal with potentially, is in terms of dealing with whatever the current code requirements. And then I'm happy to say that both those sites have been modernized within the last 3-4 years. And so we are meeting all current known codes, and they have all been approved and certified by DSA. So I think we're on a pretty solid foot right now with the facilities, subject to making any augmentations to it.
Okay, but anything they would do to the envelope or the interior, we would just ensure as part of the leases that that was a requirement that they keep.
Yeah, I think kind of Richard was saying that. I mean, how a lease agreement would be set up would have stipulations as far as what kind of tenant improvements they could do, with obviously our approval, and anything that requires going to DSA for either a fire or life safety type of change would still require us to sign off on it, because since it's our property, we have to go through that process. But I think the language in the agreement would more or less kind of protect the district if there's a request to do that. We can always we always have the reserve the right to say no to any request to make facility changes like that.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, Laurie. Jerry, do you have?
Thanks. And thanks, first of all, Richard, for the update here. You had mentioned something about Regnar and the joint use, field joint use agreement with the city of Cupertino. I was wondering, are you able to say a little bit more about that? What the issue there might be at this point, or is that too early?
No, I can explain it without a lot of detail. I can tell you the way the agreement is today with the city of Cupertino, there are certain hours of the day where the city of Cupertino can schedule the fields at Regnart for community use. And in return for that, the city of Cupertino maintains the fields, does mowing and takes care of the lawns and property. We have the ability to exit that agreement, but a concern would be then we'd have to find a way to maintain the property, to maintain the grass, to maintain there are basketball hoops, there's baseball diamonds and all of that. So that would shift to us. So we think it's a concern that if we were allowed to allow a tenant to use those fields when currently the city uses them, that then we might end up, or the district might end up on the hook to do that maintenance. So that's just a concern that we will reflect to the district as they choose a tenant, that if the tenant doesn't want to allow the city to use the fields during the current times, we may lose the benefit of having the city maintain the fields.
Got it. Okay, now that makes sense. I do remember there was a clause in there. I forget if it was 6 months for a year for either side to, I guess, exit or revisit the agreement. So it sounds like that may just be a logistical thing. It's not a showstopper, but we just have to work through it. Sounds like, okay, thanks.
It's not a showstopper, but it's a concern that there may be a cost there for the district to maintain the fields.
Sure, that makes sense. My second question, it might be more for staff. So a month ago, we signed this consulting agreement with Terra Realty, right, or to sort of provide advice on use of our properties and all that. So is any of that work going to be able to feed into the 7-Eleven before it concludes, or what does the timeline look like? Because we have sort of these two work streams, right? 7-Eleven and Terra Realty. So I was wondering if you could comment a bit on that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the bringing on of Terra Realty as a consultant, that discussion is going both parallel and has crossed into the path of the 7-Eleven committee as a resource to the committee. At our first section, our last meeting, we had Terra there, and they were further refining the zoning issues and things like that. So they will continue to be a resource for the 7-Eleven committee. My hope is that as the 7-Eleven committee completes its work and brings its recommendation forward, we'll be asking Terra Realty to work with staff and bring forward their thoughts in terms of these close school sites, as well as look at all of our district properties, as well as look at the prospects of a district office piece to kind of give us a big picture in terms of what options that we have. So it will I think Terra Realty, the work that they will do, will continue on after the 7-Eleven committee completes its work, and allow the board enough time to hear the various options and for staff to put together more of maybe a long-term plan based on what they advise us to do.
Okay, so it sounds like the plan here is to ask Terra Realty to sort of deliver their deliverables in phases. And so you're asking for a section on Meyerholtz and Regnard and Montebello first in this sort of May, June timeframe, and then they'll continue on. Okay. And then in terms of do we have a schedule in mind in terms of when we might want to bring back to the board sort of the question of the disposition of Montebello and these? I'm just thinking about, are we looking to lease out, for instance, if it were part of the recommendation to have it happen next school year, or is it going to be the next school year after? If I'm skipping ahead, that's fine. I'm just trying to sort of sort out the timelines here in my head. Is end of May, we get the recommendation from 7-Eleven, and are we then, is staff thinking that we would take up the question of what to do with these properties then? Or will we wait for Terra Realty to complete its work and then take that question up? Does that make sense?
I fully understand your question, and I'll clarify that we don't have a particular schedule yet.
Okay.
The thought right now is that we would continue to work with Terra Realty to look for their advice, but I believe at the same time, staff would like to start a process, a kind of an RFP process for potential tenants at the sites, especially since we already have been contacted by over 24 folks, and we do want to make sure that they know where we are in the process. They're all very eager to find out what will happen next and would we consider their requests. And so I think what we have to do is staff will come back with the board once the 7-Eleven committee has completed its work and establish a timeline for which we will look at short-term and long-term plans and needs. And that would incorporate whether there's a process for a short-term lease or wait until Terra completes the full analysis. But I think we're going to be having conversations immediately following the work of the 7-Eleven committee to start putting some ideas down together. And we want to have that conversation with the board.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for the clarification, Chris. That's it.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Richard. I think I don't have a lot of questions, but only one thing on the joint agreement with the Cupertino City. So what I understand is it's only for probably about a dozen schools or so, like field, not for every school fields. We don't have an agreement with them, right? Like, so in this case, if we are, can we exit only for, or do we have to completely change everything, the agreement, or if needed, only this couple of sites, for example, mainly I think Ragnat is the one which
it's been some time since I've looked at the agreement.
Yeah.
I don't believe, personally, I don't believe we have to exit out of the entire agreement if we have an interest in only talking about Regnart.
Correct.
But again, I haven't looked at it in a while, but I would hope that we have that ability. And I would think the agreement would allow both parties, as long as they mutually agree, to, amend something like that potentially.
Okay.
I mean, I still believe it's still in our best interest to continue to have that partnership with the city of Cupertino to help us, allow them the program and help us maintain those fields.
Yeah, that's true. I think, yeah, that's what I was. Thanks, Chris. I think that's all I have. Any other questions? Any comments here?
We
Okay,
do
any public-
have two public comments
Okay.
on this item.
Yeah, let's go ahead with that.
Mary Lund and Diana, if you could please raise your hands. Diana, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak at this point. I have been following the 7-Eleven committee, and I do have some concerns. I noticed that the vice chair did not even agree to the mission of the committee. He abstained from that vote. And then also I noticed that there was a public records request that's posted on the CUSD site, in which the vice chair is basically getting direction from the Cupertino vice mayor and someone else. The vice chair even said at one point in an email, I don't have time to go over all this information. This was before the first meeting. Can you please tell me what I should say and ask? I thought this committee was formed for the best interest of the district and the community, and that the members would be impartial enough to discuss it. But apparently the vice chair went in with a motive already. I would suggest that the whole community and the board please read the information in this Public Records Act. And I believe that you too will realize that there's a hidden agenda going on, and that Liang Chow is basically getting Raj Singh to ask everything that she wants and do everything that she wants. And I find that very disturbing for the district as a whole, because this isn't being done ethically. And I just ask you to please read that and see what is being said, so you know who to take seriously on the committee and who probably shouldn't be on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. And then,
I do not see Mary, and that was our final comment on this item.
okay, I think then we'll move on to the next one. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you very much.
Let's
It's been
go
my
to the-
pleasure to serve.
Yeah. So let's go to 7.3. Who's talking about this? It's again.
Yeah. Allison's gonna lead
Okay,
us off.
Allison. Okay.
Hi, thank you. So we are going to try to accomplish 3 things in a pretty short amount of time here. We wanted to remind the board that in March 2020 and December 2020, we provided some information on our identification as significantly disproportionate. This was our over-identification of Hispanic and African American students in special education. We want to give you an update on that work and also help you know what is coming next in that work. So to help me with this will be our Director of Special Education, Jennifer Willis, and also one of our Ed Services Directors, Nick Prihodko, and they're both here virtually to tell you about this work.
Hi. Oh, here we go. Hi, good evening to our community and to our Board of Education. Director Prihodko and I are really excited to give you an update on our significant disproportionality work. It's very important work for our students, and I think some really good things have been happening. Next slide. As Allison mentioned, we were found to be disproportionate in over-identifying students who are Hispanic overall, too many students who are Hispanic in special education, and then also too many students who are Hispanic who are identified as having specific learning disabilities and another eligibility called other health impairment. Additionally, in 2019, we were found to be over-identifying African American students in the area of specific learning disabilities. And just as a quick reminder, in order to be significantly disproportionate, you have to be disproportionate for 3 years in a row. And California Department of Education does a yearly annual review of special education data and looks at all of our numbers to see where we need to really be looking more closely at our systems. All right, so as just a quick reminder, we spent about 10 months meeting with our stakeholder groups, meeting with our schools, diving into the data, really looking at different hypotheses as to why we were over-identifying certain ethnicities and racial groups in special education. And from that, we were able to come up with with a plan, and it's called the Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan. And then annually, we have to track that plan, and we have to look at the number of students who receive services identified in that plan and the number of students who eventually became eligible for special education, even though they did receive those services. And the district is required to use 15% of our special education IDEA Part B funds in order to support this work. This work is really meant to be in general education before students become eligible for special education, because the idea is to really address our systems and work with students to make sure that they're not falling behind to the point that they eventually become eligible for special education. Okay, so we did identify root causes in that 10-month-long investigation. And the main causes that we came up with are that we needed a tiered system of interventions. So we had students in the bottom 10 to 20% of classes, whether in any ethnicity or racial group. About 10 to 20% of the kids were actually not making the gains that we had wanted them to make. And so we said, we need to be putting into place a really good research-based tiered intervention plan. And then we also found that there was an issue with language development. We were looking at students who were speaking English as a second language and misidentifying them as having a learning disability. And I think part of that was coming from referring students to special education very early before they had gained the language skills that they needed. And then another was training for our special education staff and assessment practices. We were not consistently assessing students in their first language and during the assessment process, which was leading to more identification of students that was inappropriate. And finally, we found that there was some unconscious bias, that students were referred because staff were looking at students as potentially having a disability. It was a part of that bias that was not conscious.
All right, my turn. So good evening, board, executive cabinet. Yeah, so, through that work, and I would like to echo what Jennifer said, is that this is truly these root causes begin and start with our initial tier of instruction and systems that are in place in our general education settings. And so really the bulk of the work has been lying in there after we've went through and discovered these root causes. So that 15% of the IDA budget that's earmarked for the SACE work this is kind of the breakdown of that. And we're charged with over a 27-month period to spend down these monies. We are on target to do that. So we're looking good in there. And we have 2 more reporting periods. Every 2 months, we submit a progress report to the state. And so they're tracking us being on target of not only spending these, but making progress on our action items. Next slide, please. And here's our action item so far to date. I will put a qualifier on there that a lot of things were kind of stunted due to distance learning. So a lot of things that were put into the original plan to address the root causes that Jennifer reviewed kind of didn't get really started until this year. And then this year wasn't even COVID free. So we still had some hurdles and roadblocks and some things that slowed down our progress. But what we have been able to do, and that we're already seeing results on that I'll show you in a couple of slides, is we have iReady assessments and tiered reading interventions at all of our sites. We didn't have reading for all schools previously until this year. And so now all schools are able to collect data and monitor their students using iReady. And we also have all of our elementary schools now have some kind of reading intervention in place, which is great. Before it was only, a couple of schools that serve certain populations. And now we have some kind of intervention in place at all sites to support kids. We've also been able to train our school psychologists and our SLPs in some best practice around when they have students when they have student study teams that they're supporting that are bringing kids, for recommendation of more support or possible maybe a need for an assessment to see if they qualify for special education, of really looking at the steps that we take to vet that, to make sure we have exhausted all of our options, to make sure it truly is that we suspect a learning disability, and it's not something due to acquiring English as a second language. We've done different trainings with the district leadership team around IEP processes, but also looking at data, tracking data and interventions, and trying to align interventions to what that data is telling us. We do have every site submitted a SIPSA plan, and aligning their SIPSA plans to our LCAP goals. Everyone had reading goals in there that also tied to our SACE plan to help address the needs of our students in reading in all areas, especially our students who are in our focal groups that are our EL students, as well as our students who are African American or Hispanic. And so everyone had a goal in their CIFSA plans in that aligned with that greater LCAP goal. And you know, it was a little bit sticky this year with subs to get this process going as well as we were doing pre-COVID, but our our collaborative leadership teams working together, but then working within their sites, what we call our CSTs, our collaborative student teams, to look at that data, to look at the supports that they're giving kids in the classroom, and to work together to come up with, you know, what else can we do before we start pulling this kid out of class for, you know, a little bit more intervention outside of class. What can we do inside class? Small group instruction, differentiation, things like that. So good news and bad news. So this is the breakdown of our risk ratios. And this is how the CDE determines whether we are disproportionate and significantly disproportionate. We want to be under, the magic number is 3. Once you're more than 3 times at risk of being identified for special education, or not at risk, if we're qualifying at a rate of 3 times more or higher, we are definitely over identifying. And so what you can see when we compare the 2020 data to the 2021 is that we have met and are no longer disproportionate in 2 of the 4 categories that we were disproportionate in. And in the other 2, overall Hispanic and Hispanic SLD, we've been able to reduce that risk ratio. However, we are still disproportionate in those areas, and we, you know, which tells us we have more work to do, but some of the things that we are doing and have in place are working. And so it just, you know, instead of this, the principal team and the leadership team that I've been working with, the stakeholder group, you know, what we've been telling ourselves and sharing is this isn't like a punishment. You know, this is an opportunity to make change and change the system, you know, not just in a couple of schools, but across the district, to make sure we're serving the needs of all our students, and we're giving every student the opportunity to be successful, and in this case to be reading at grade level. And so we're making some progress there. So here is what I've been tracking this year is as we go from, you know, year 1 to year 2, and start creating a new plan, because as you saw, we fixed a couple situations, but we're still disproportionate in a couple areas. So we have a new plan that will be starting at the end of this year, to carry on that work, to continue to address disproportionality with our Hispanic students. And so what we've done is, since the beginning of the year, I've been tracking 218 students from our schools that were designated to be part of this work. And the group I picked were all students at this site. This is just gen ed only, because that's what we're trying to solve for, right? We're trying to support our general education students that are not reading at grade level, and ensuring that they get the supports and the instruction they need to not go any further down the process of being identified for special education. So what you can see is in the beginning of the year, our initial diagnostic, these are 218 students, K-8, through those different schools, hitting the subgroups that are in our focal groups, you know, in our work with the significant disproportionality, our English language learners, our Hispanics, and our African American students. And you can see that the gains that we've made. We still have some work to do, but you mean our staffs at our schools that have been doing this work and been working on putting different interventions in place, you can see the growth that these students are making. And it's been really great. And this is just diagnostic 3 was like beginning of March. So we still have like almost a third of the school year to go. So hopefully we continue to see these numbers grow on the top half in the orange and purple, I think. And then another piece I wanted to share with you is, you know, this has been a year where we've had the opportunity, because we have the kids back in campus, we're no longer dealing with distance learning, is to pull out some of the things that were in our plan as action items and try them out. Like we were finally at a point where we can like, okay, we got our kids back. We know what we're doing. All sites have the data that they need now. Let's put these interventions in place, try these different strategies and see what works. So when we start next year, we can know what to scale up and what to perhaps, change and tweak. And that's really the opportunity that we get through the SIG-DIS work is okay, let's not just go status quo and let the majority of the students with very high test scores cover up all the low test scores and all that jazz. We can really dig in and see how we address and serve our students better. One of the schools that has taken probably the most drastic approach as far as totally changing their instruction for their students has been DeVargas Elementary School. And so this year, the teachers in kinder and first grade at DeVargas have been working with their school intervention specialists, reading specialists, and as well as the principal, Ms. Park, to take a new approach to teaching phonics in the elementary grades. So what we have here is data from the 1920 school year, which was the last clean set of data that we had for our EAT scores. So that's our, as you can see there, the letter ID, blending, rhyming, and et cetera. And we're comparing it to this year's winter data. And the reason we picked those two data points is in 1920, we were still kind of like, we knew we were trying things, we had interventions in place, we were working our butts off, but we didn't make a huge shift where this year, kinder and first grade are using a completely Orton Gillingham based approach to phonics instruction. So all their methodologies are coming from trainings that the staff members have had and shared with their colleagues over the summer and last spring break through the Institute for Multisensory Education, which is a very heavy dose of Orton Gillingham training, which is a reading methodology and practices that are proven through research to address dyslexia and reading problems that are characteristic of dyslexia. So what you can see here is really stark difference between pre-Orton Gillingham type strategies, where the teachers are teaching phonics in a very direct, explicit way that is systematic and multisensory. And so you can see in a lot of these areas almost double-digit gains and pretty large gains from 1920 to 2021. And what this is telling me is that approach is working and making a difference. For reference, gains across the district in the same time period were fairly nominal. You're looking at a +2%, +3%, +1%, +4%, and actually a -1% in sound ID within the other 19 elementary schools in that same time period. So it's not just like we made gains that were similar to everybody else. They've made pretty large gains, and I'm really excited to see like where it goes from here. And then what can we learn from this to maybe take into some of these other schools that are doing the significant disability work, like disproportionality work, with whether it's Nimitz, Eisenhower, other sites that are part of that group that are trying different pieces. They just haven't gone full scale on any one of those pieces yet. And DeVargas is the only site that has done that. And so that's why I use that as kind of the case study for the work that we've done so far. So really excited to see where we can build off of this and where we can go from here with that. And finally, as we move in to, we're big time planning right now for next year and everyone's getting ready for that. We're looking at, obviously continuing our work to address this. We have a fantastic opportunity that over 100 teachers are going to take advantage of this summer, doing a training through the IMSE, the International Multisensory Education Group, who are the big proponents of Orton Gillingham type methodology. So it's a 5-day intensive training, and we have over 100 teachers in our district volunteering to do that this summer. And so we're looking to see how that can expand into our tier 1, which are like our first layer of instruction. So we're not being responsive but we're being proactive. And we're not looking to constantly intervene all the time. We're looking to give the best instruction right off the bat so that we don't have to intervene as much as we are. So we have that happening. We're going to be bringing in and expanding some interventions using Haggerty, which is a phonemic awareness instruction tool and program, and expanding our use of Sunday, which is an Orton Gillingham based tool that can be used, that we're currently using in special education, as well as intervention at some of our school sites. But how do we expand that more? And with the training that teachers have over the summer, how can that possibly spill into the gen ed setting and that tier 1 level of instruction? And finally, we have a school site that's going to be piloting the new dyslexia screening that the state's going to adopt, that UCSF is creating. And this is going to really be kind of useful, especially for that school site that's doing that, so that they can kind of have a heads up. But it's going to be a piece in place that's going to really support our work of being able to identify students that need support in reading much earlier than what we currently do. And this is going to be something that the state's going to roll out for all schools as a mandatory thing. We're one of 11 states in the country that don't have strong laws around dyslexia and how to address it. And we're finally kind of getting some of those things in place. And so there's going to be a trickle down of that to the districts. But it's nice to know that we're somewhat ahead of the curve by trying to address some of these things already. So our teachers and our principals and everyone will be well prepared for when the state starts kind of forcing folks' hands. We'll already know what to do and how to do it. So I'm kind of excited for the future of heading this off and shrinking those risk factors down even more. That's it.
Thanks, Nick and Jennifer. But do you have anything more to update? Or okay,
I don't, and no more questions either. Okay. No, I'm just joking.
So the same order we go then, if any.
I don't have any questions. Lori and I met with. I don't have any questions. Lori and I met with Allison and Nick and Lynn today and talked extensively about reading. So I'm good. I'm excited about what they're doing. So
Thanks for that.
So I had some questions about the root causes and the actions being taken to address them. So just so I understand a little bit, because some of them, it's easy to match up, right? The need for tiered interventions, and then actions is the I-ready assessments and interventions. The need for training and assessment, and then, training and assessment. But can you go a little bit more into the root cause being, students who speak English as a second language being misidentified as a learning disability, and then the other one about unconscious bias. Students referred to due to unconscious bias on part of the staff, and help me understand or tie that over to which actions are going to be addressing that.
Jennifer, would you like to speak to that since you did that work initially?
Sure. So the issue of students being misidentified because they speak English as a second language, we did find a correlation when we looked at our students in special education. We had too many students who spoke English as a second language identified, higher than what would be expected just in a typical population. And so it really spoke to the need to beef up our English language learner interventions and processes. And I'm trying to think of another. Nick, can you think of another part of the plan that besides the identification of students?
Well, I think also, it was found that some students were not being, when they were making it through to the assessment process, they weren't being assessed in their native language. So there's cases of that were also leading to, for them being too many kids qualifying when maybe they shouldn't have, and they just needed more time to develop their English language. And with the unconscious bias, I do apologize. There on the action items to date, we did leave off the National Equity Project training that all administrators had. We did some extensive training last year with that group, and this year all new principals to the district received the same training. And it was a little, we had our hands full of contact tracing and all that, but some sites were starting to develop that work with their leadership teams at their site, talking about equity and unconscious bias. And when you work in a district where there are so many students that are achieving because of the supports they have at home, because of other opportunities and greater experiences, it's easy to look at, oh man, look at all these students that are up here, and then these couple kids that are down here, these kids need special ed. No, those kids are probably pretty close to meeting standard. They're just not overly achieving. And that's kind of when that unconscious bias comes into play. And it happens out throughout the Bay Area. When we meet with colleagues from other districts that are doing the same work, it's echoed the same way. And it's a challenge, right? And I think, like I said, it's an opportunity, not a punishment, when we can start making sure we are a great district for all kids, and it's not just certain kids that are successful. And so that's what we're doing, and I think it's great that we're making the headway that we are in such a short time, given a pandemic. Does that answer your question, Sylvia? Sorry, I did that. That is my fault. That should have been on there as one of the action items that we completed. It was like one of the first things we actually got done was the NEP piece.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. That's helpful to hear. Can you just go a little bit deeper for me? So like, for example, realizing that maybe that assessment should have been done in the native language would have helped to not have the misidentification. But do we have a process in place to do that? Are those processes being put together now, or is it case by case, or like what's the?
Yeah, we provided extensive training to our psychologists and our SLPs on the practices that are best practices for assessing students who speak English as a second language. We actually brought in Jerice Butterfield, who is one of the most well-regarded people in that field there is in the state, or possibly even in the country. And she did a day-long training with our staff on really knowing when to do certain types of tests and when to pivot to other kinds of tests, and that just really hammered home the importance of testing in a student's first language.
And we have staff who are bilingual who are able to do that.
We do not. We do not. We use interpreters to do those assessments.
I see. Okay. And then with regard to the unconscious bias and then the National Equity Project, but the principals aren't the ones doing the assessments, right? Is it the teacher level or is it the admin level?
And I would say it's both. It probably varies from site to site, but the administrators are very involved or should be very involved as students are going through that, the tiers of intervention at their sites and going through that child find process.
So given that the staff are the ones who are maybe working with the students day to day, is there anything that's one of these related to one of these actions that will help equip our staff to be culturally sensitive or culturally knowledgeable, I suppose?
So
I think that's kind of what the work that we're currently trying to jump into is our site leadership working with their teachers to, they have been trained, they've worked with the National Equity Project, and now the next step is that they work and lead that work at their sites with their teachers.
And we also did training.
Yeah, Nick.
We also did training.
Jennifer, Nick. Can I just jump in for a second? Sorry, it's hard with the virtual meeting. Who's going to talk when? as we're looking at the next plan, we're in the process of drafting that, and we'll be continuing to work with our site leadership teams and figuring out, what to include in that plan. I think Nick is right on when he's saying that the principal is really in charge of monitoring how the kids are monitored and then how they move through those processes at the site level. So whether it's the CST or the SST or referral to special ed, the principal is in charge of shepherding that process at the school site along with staff. So between that and then naming the goals around student groups in the SIPSAs and really closely monitoring, our principals have an eye on that. And while we haven't done direct bias training with the teachers, I think we have taken some strong steps through that initial principal training. So we can take another look at that as we're thinking about phase 2 and considering our LCAP goals also around English learners.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially as I think about our district and so many, all the languages that are spoken from all of our students and just kind of having that cultural, literacy for any of our students would be helpful, and just being able to provide those tools for our staff, I think would help them feel more, feel more confident in their role as well. My other question, that was a long first question, sorry. My second question is the Orton Gillingham approach, which sounds amazing. And it sounds like you're kind of doing like a semi rollout, or just are you targeting only those schools that have a little bit more higher disproportionality, or will this be something that we roll out to the entire district, or like give me some more picture of what that looks like?
If you could give us a little more time, we haven't had a chance to talk to our principals about that. That is coming on Monday. So I wouldn't want to get ahead of sharing details before they had a chance to weigh in. But in essence, what we want to talk to them about is we see this really promising result at DeVargas. So how can we expand that to other sites, looking at next year and thinking about, our primary students. So we want to talk to them about the details, and then I can share with you in the weekend update where we are with it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Okay. Thank you for the update. And as Phyllis mentioned, we got to meet today and sort of ask some questions specifically that we had been having around the reading elements of this. I'm so thrilled to see the DeVargas data, and I think that speaks so highly to Nick. I know you used the phrase today in our meeting earlier, and then also tonight, that it's not a punishment, it's an opportunity. And I think just the fact that we have embraced that opportunity, these results are really speaking for themselves. So I'm super excited that that's where you're going with it. I do have a question around, I'm going to go back to the same slide Sylvia was on, which was the identified root causes. Presumably some of our kiddos, if we're talking about our younger kiddos that are in some of these later data sets for KN1, maybe coming into us from the regional center, already coming into us with special education plans or IEPs. Are those kiddos counted in this disproportionality? And if so, do we have any obligation to be communicating with the regional center on our disproportionality? And do they play a role in helping us address any of that?
Jennifer?
I'm sorry. So are you speaking about our 3-year-olds that come over, or just students?
Whether or not they were in our preschool program, or if they come in with an IEP, but from not our preschool program, either way, are they included in these disproportionality numbers?
Yes, they are. It's just a straight data pull every December to see, what students and what their ethnicities are. And so, yeah, we are a system, a whole statewide system, and we're all working, most of the districts in the state are working on something similar. And so hopefully we will help each other with those kinds of numbers.
So, but do we have any sort of tie back with those referral sources? Because if we're inheriting some percentage of these kiddos already coming to us and we're not the ones identifying them, do we have any sort of cycle of communication back with them on the work we're doing and the work they're doing? Because there must be some synergy there, or no?
No, we don't. And I'm just thinking about the numbers. We have approximately 178 students in special education right now who are Hispanic, for example. I don't think it's a large number who are mobile. I could take a look at that number and see, but I don't think it's a large number. I would say it's on the order of like maybe 5 kids this year.
Okay.
I think I recall, Jennifer, when we were doing the initial analysis, that most of the students that we were looking at from a case study point of view were identified by our staff, if I
Okay.
recall.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's helpful to know. Okay, that's helpful to know. And then on the slide that's the student group data, where we're looking at sort of our last, I think, Nick, you called it a clean data set prior to some of the work that we've been dealing with, in response to the pandemic. And then to diagnostic 3 here, there was a diagnostic 2 somewhere in the middle. Is that something that we can get maybe in the Friday updates, just to kind of be able to celebrate those milestones with you guys and sort of see the picture over time of what that pattern looks like?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. And I think that's it for me, other than I'm really excited to see where you go with the tier 1 and tier 2 rollout. I really, like I said, appreciate viewing this through the lens of the opportunities here. And I think that speaks to why we were chosen as a site for the participating in the statewide effort towards the dyslexia screener. I think that we're on the right track, and I really appreciate all of the work that you're doing to get out ahead of the game on this, because I do think it's so important that we get our kiddos what they need before it becomes a problem whenever we can. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Laurie. Jerry, you want to?
Yeah, thanks. And like Lori, I'm also very happy to see the positive progress here. So thank you for that. 2 questions. So if we could go back to the root cause slide. So I'm maybe picking up on some of what Sylvia had started. I'm wondering about the ESL piece, and the reason is we've always had ESL students here, and I'm sort of wondering, just at a sort of maybe a high level, has something changed recently to cause this to? I know this is really high level and qualitative, but I was wondering if there's anything staff could share about why ESL is a cause now, when we've had ESL students here for a while.
Jennifer can probably help me with this, but I do know this is a new process. So the monitoring, the spotlight on this as an area that we need to pay attention to is new in this way. Jennifer, do you know how long that's been happening?
Well, actually, it's not new. It has been.
Okay, I'm wrong.
Yeah, significant disproportionality requirements have been around for quite a long time. It's just it's just new to us, and it's new in that so many of the districts in the state are actually now being identified as significantly disproportionate in these kinds of areas. So as far as the EL, it really is for this process, students who are Hispanic who are also EL. So I think there are multi factors and components that are coming together. It's not just one simple thing. So I think that a lot of what is happening is that, like Nick pointed out, we have our students who are very have a lot of enrichment happening at home, really heavy duty preschool activities, and they come to us really not needing a lot of intervention. And then some of our students don't have that, and so they look like they're more they're lower than they really are. And then you throw in English language learning on top of it, and it just really compounds the issue. So like I said, I think it's a multi-layered, complex kind of an issue.
Okay, all right, thanks. And all right, and the second question then is around sort of the measures. So there was a table there with a couple of rows. In terms of what the state's CDE is looking for, they're looking for this ratio across the entire population, or do they look at them per whatever subgroup? Does that question make sense? So the ratio, this proportionality ratio, we don't want to be more than 3 times. This is across the entire sort of population rather than every subgroup has to be below 3.0. Is that the case?
So
You have broken these out here.
Yeah,
Right.
so what they do is they look at what number, given our population of students who are Hispanic, would
Right.
be statistically likely to be in special education or have a specific learning disability. And our
Got it.
number
Okay.
was 3 times that number.
Right. Okay. So it is, all right. And then what are the consequences for, so if we're still above 3, say the next reporting period this December, what are the consequences of the district? Is it the requirement that we continue to spend 15% of the ideal funds, or are there other consequences for the district?
Yeah, that is exactly what it is. We just have to keep up the work until we are providing equitable education and special education. It's every year.
Okay,
until we get
great.
it right. Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. I'll go with the same slide again. So this 8.08, right? That looks up, and our target is like, or we are supposed to get within 3, right? So this looks significantly high. And is it like since 2020, or it's been traditionally very high and we were consistently doing better? Because what's the confidence that we can hit this number, right, of the 3.0 kind of, or better, right? So is it too difficult of a task?
So I'm sorry, are you asking? Go ahead, Allison.
So we are identified after 3 years of being over 3. So we've had a pattern of it being too high. And looking at that Hispanic specific learning disability line, the current result is about a little more than 8 times the expected number. So instead of 3 times the expected number. So, I mean, we feel hopeful that we can tackle this with what we're doing. If we can provide interventions before special education that are effective, then kids' needs will be met prior to, giving them an IEP. So we're seeing some good progress with the things that we're doing now, and we feel that we can tackle it, even though that is a big number. It's our biggest area, the furthest from the goal. But it is also one of the areas that we're seeing, the biggest kind of hopeful outcomes. So I think it's going to take time for us to build this. We're a large district. We have a lot of staff, a lot of schools, and so it takes time. But we feel that we can meet the goal.
So historically itself, this is a big number. It was a 2-digit number earlier, two-digit times basically now. So we improved over a period of time, or you think it's kind of like, because 9 to 8 is not 9 point, yeah, roughly about two times that reduction is there, but still though.
Yeah, no, I'd like to, if I may. So yeah, so ideally 3 is too big, right? For a Hispanic students to be identified 3 times more than their peer, right? You would hope it was a 1-to-1 correlation and not 3, right? So 8 times, other kids in our district, that's huge. I mean, the challenge we do have is once students have an IEP and are receiving services, exiting special education is possible, but not, it's not going to happen at a high rate that's really going to cut that number down. So that's why we look at it as a general education issue of where we need to put changes in place to do it. But like, for the fact that we've already dropped to, that almost what is it, 1.5%, you mean that's really telling. And so hopefully we can continue that. It's just that it's not like the biggest population in our school district, but it's a high number of kids within that population, and that number just like naturally kind of lives kind of higher. So you mean ideally hopefully all these numbers continue to drop, even the numbers that are already 3 and lower continue to get lower over time. But that 8 times greater is, that's definitely a signifier that there's something wrong in our system as far as addressing.
I wanted to mention, I think it's really important, specific learning disability. The most common specific learning disability is dyslexia. And we've adopted an Orton Gillingham intervention system in special education, and now rolling it out in different places for general education. So that is a research-based methodology specifically for dyslexia. So getting in there early with that, MTSS with a research-based intervention for SLD, I think we're going to see this number coming down quickly.
Okay, thanks. Then this disproportionality, is it like when we compare to our districts around, is it quite normal, like or other districts also has the similar challenges, or do you know that, and where do we stand? Like, are we in a much better position, or we are in line with them, or kind of?
So in our SELPA, we all have the same disproportionality. We were all identified in almost exactly the same areas with just a few differences here and there, and with similar intensity of the disproportionality. And as I mentioned, across the state, it's something like 80% of the school districts are identified as being disproportionate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not,
Okay,
it's really telling when you go to some of these state meetings and working with like colleagues and hearing it. I think one of the things that we have done that I don't think other districts, I don't think the other 80% have done, maybe a small proportion have done, is that I think Jennifer and Stephen Kaufman, who was in my position at the time, they really started making that shift and recognizing it, that the onus should be in the gen ed side of things. So that's why, there's myself or Lynn Shimada, Carrie Ito are also, very heavily involved with this work to do that, because it's really going to make the difference when we own it, embrace it, and it doesn't live as a special education thing, even though it's the special education funds that get, earmarked for it and things like that. And I think that even when I talked to our Jerice Butterfield or our contact with the CDE that's kind of guiding us through the process when it's time to write the plan and do the progress reports, he's like, that's the biggest thing, right? If you can get over that hurdle and shift that mindset to be addressing things via general education, then you're heading in the right direction a lot quicker than everybody else. And so that's one of the things I'm proud of our district that we're taking that approach.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, and that's all from me. Any more questions from us? Any public comments?
We did have one public comment.
Okay.
Yi Ding, if you could please raise your hand. I don't see him on the screen.
Okay. And thank you. We'll go to the next item then, 7.4. I think it's Chris, right? Yeah, Chris, please.
Thank you. Good evening again. I'd like to reintroduce this item from earlier tonight. The board had a public hearing in regards to the updated developer fee rates. Just to go back a little bit and share with the board, every other year, the state allocation board updates its rates, state approved rates for developer fees for level 1 fees. And so this year, the full level 1 fees that the state has approved is $4.79 per square foot for our share, which is 60% of it. Our share would be $2.87 of that, and the other portion would be going to Fremont Union High School District, and the same applies to the commercial rate as well. Tonight, this is just for information, subject to staff bringing this item back for a recommendation at our May 12th meeting. Should the board approve of this resolution at that time, this new developer fee rate would not take into effect until 60 days after the board approval. And that would, I think, bring it almost to like July 1st. So staff would like to recommend the board to, well, not, I mean, at our next meeting, staff would like to recommend the board to consider the revised developer fee rates. I'll entertain any questions that the board may have.
That's anything further? Okay. Yeah. That's a good one. Sylvia, anything?
Just curious. So these are the rates for new development, right? Not for existing, just for upcoming new developments, not for things that are currently in process, or how does it work?
Mainly new developments, but it also applies to any time there are additional changes that net an increase in square footage. So you may have a house that you demolish some portion of it. Mathematically, you get a credit for, but if you were to expand your square footage, you would be paying the developer fees on the add-on. So it involves existing housing if you add additions to it, or any brand new home that gets built. And then the same thing applies to commercial. So any new commercial buildings that get built and added, the commercial developer fee rate applies. But then a lot of the commercial properties, they get I don't know, redivvied up, or they get redone. And so again, same thing. The net increase of any square footage is then what is subject to the developer fees.
Okay. But overall, and I know I've seen this, I know you've presented this before, but it's been a while. The total amount that we're getting from developer fees with regard to like our budget is not very big, right? Do you happen to know the percentage?
I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I can provide that to the board in the Friday letter. But you're right, it's not a large amount, and also to remind everybody, these funds are outside of the general fund, and so these dollars here, don't provide any kind of benefit to the general fund, but is the intention of the use of these funds are to mitigate the impacts and effects as a student population grows or increases or changes. And so what we we currently now use these funds right now to pay for the portables that we currently lease. And that's mainly where the majority of the funds that go to.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
That's okay. Any questions here?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, anything?
No questions other than, I guess, the observation that it's, these legal limits are perennially lower than the impact on us to provide the facilities. The justification report's interesting reading. I found it, so I appreciate y'all attaching some of the earlier issues of those to see what it costs to provide classrooms. And so, yeah, no questions, and I would certainly support this coming back on May 12th. Thank you.
Can it come back on consent?
Yeah, at the pleasure of the board, we can certainly put it on.
This is a resolution, though.
Yeah, so we had to.
Oh, it is a resolution. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I would suggest that we bring it back as its own item since it involves a resolution.
Is there any public comment on this?
No public comment.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any. Okay, so we will bring it back as a
We'll bring
action.
it back as an action because
yeah.
it's a resolution. Yeah.
So since it's okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to the next one. 7.5 school use of school facility updates.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce this item tonight for information. I wanted to share some updated information with the board. what's before you are a couple of items. One is our current terms and conditions for our use of facilities. And then the other documentation is just what our current rate structure is. And so the terms and conditions I'm sharing with the board tonight, this information item is really give the board an opportunity to take a look at the current terms and conditions. And really, this is more of a technical cleanup that staff has done to look at the terms and conditions. To be frank with you, that the terms and conditions hadn't been updated in several years, and some of the most obvious things in the terms and conditions, there was a section in there that talked about at one time, I recall when I was here last time, that not all of our school sites were open for public use or civic center uses. And if I recall right, we had recommended the board at that time to limit the amount of sites that were open to the public because we were dealing at that time with a budget shortfall, and we were trying to focus, if possible, the uses at certain school sites and try to maximize the use of that. But it's been some time, and currently now these terms and conditions don't actually reflect our current practices. And so again, a lot of the changes in here were more technical, just to reflect our current practices and do some cleanup in regards to just better language. Other than the terms and conditions, then the other suggested change that we'd like to bring back to the board, again, this is for information, is to update the rate sheet a little bit. Let me just kind of walk us through here. So on the sheet here, there are 5 different categories for which we have rates, and each of those categories identifies a certain subgroup of this community, as far as whether they're an association directly associated with a school, whether they are a nonprofit that focuses on student youth in our community, or just a nonprofit. And the last column represents the at market. And so really, we're not looking at making any major changes to our current fee structure. I'd like to bring that conversation back in the future. But as we are transitioning to our new facility rentals platform, the Facilitron that we're doing business will have the ability to help us look at what our current rates are to see if we are in line with our current costs. But really, the only thing we've made changes were just a couple of things. One of the areas we changed was the blacktop costs for group 2, the tennis court costs for group 2, and the parking lot costs for group 2. And again, group 2 reflects those nonprofit groups that focus on our youth that live in the community. And the reason why we're making a recommendation to increase them up slightly is that there are some costs that the district incurs to maintain those facilities. I think maybe the best example is really the fields. So we do have to still other than the fields that the city of Cupertino and the city of Sunnyvale maintain for us, mainly the Los Altos fields, the Saratoga fields, the city of San Jose fields. There are costs for the district, and we had originally set up the rate structure where we weren't charging anything for the use of those for those groups. And staff is making the recommendation to raise those rates, but still at a discounted rate for those community groups, just with an attempt to recover some of those costs for the district. And then the last change on the rate sheet is actually on the bottom in regards to custodial. The custodial rates, again, haven't been updated in quite a while. And we typically charge what we pay the custodian, the full cost or the true cost. And so with these rates not having been updated in quite a while, we've been probably subsidizing the cost of the custodial for a lot of these activities. And keep in mind, this does not currently reflect what we're still in the process of, since we're still in the process of negotiations, these current rates don't necessarily reflect anything that may change as a result of salary changes. So I'd like to, once negotiations get settled, also bring back a recommendation to update again these rates to reflect what our current, or what would be our current custodial rates, so that, you know, at least the district is covering its costs in the event of renting out our facilities. So I'll entertain any questions that the board may have.
Nothing from me.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. So when we're charging rates, this is for groups outside of school functions, right? Or like, for example, I'm thinking of some schools, and after some elementary schools have like a Lego robotics or basketball teams, or, you know, like those kinds of things that are for our students, but they're not specifically part of our curriculum. Are those, and some of them are parent run for the kids. So is that considered a group that also gets charged, or is that not considered? Is that not part of that group?
As you described the various different groups, some of them fall into these various categories. So let's start off with parent organizations. Parent organizations like our home and school clubs and PTAs, those parent groups that are directly associated with the school site, they fall into typically that first category where there aren't any charges, unless there's a custodial charge for, you know, outside of the workday kinds of things. Then there's the next group. They are typically like your traditional nonprofit organizations, but we differentiate between those nonprofit organizations that directly support and involve our students, our youth in this community. And then one step above that are your other nonprofit community groups that don't actually service students. And that's why we have that distinction. So there are two different rates if you're a nonprofit. The ones that support students in our community get a further discount, but then the traditional nonprofits just get the discount. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
no, that's helpful. So then the staff person being on site, or I guess so I guess the change here then is that we're not requiring the district employee to be on site during the hours. We're just asking them to be there to lock and unlock the doors. Is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd like to clarify. The way it was originally written in here did stipulate that a staff person had to be there the entire time, not just open up the school and lock up the school. But we found out that that wasn't actually reflecting our current practice. So currently now, we do require, if the school or any part of the facility needs to be opened up, that a district employee be there to open up and lock up. And then obviously, depending upon the activity and the amount of people involved in that activity, the district may still choose to, or not choose, but may require that say a custodian be on site if there are, you know, hundreds of people and having to service the restrooms and things like that. So it kind of depends on the amount of people involved with the event, but generally speaking, why we changed the wording a little bit here is that the practice has been in some cases where, you know, we don't have that district staff person stay there the entire time that someone's in, say, a classroom. So if someone wanted to use a portable classroom for a good part of the day, there really isn't a need to have that custodian and then charge that organization for that custodian to sit around for that, because there isn't anything for them to do at that point in time. So that's the idea.
So this is different than from, I feel like we have another practice or policy. I don't know if it's specifically a policy, but of having a certificated teacher on site when there's after school activities. But so this is like a separate from that. Is that?
That's when it's an extracurricular, a co-curricular activity. So if the school's hosting if a parent is running a club after school and it's a branch of the school, it's an extension of the school, we would have staff members there. They wouldn't be charged because it's part of a school function like the after-school sports programs.
Like Destination Imagination.
If the school was running Destination Imagination, not bringing in an outside organization that leases or rents the facility, we would have a staff member there present because we're advertising it and offering it as a school entity.
Okay. So that activity wouldn't be receiving this terms and conditions.
No, because it's part of a school. It's a school function. It's an extension of the school.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then my second question then is with regard to the rental fee for fields in Cupertino City schools. Do we not get those fees because we have this exchange of them maintaining?
Correct. We since the city programs, the city permits, we aren't part of anything that they generate. If they generate something, we're not a part of it.
So like a Parks and Rec type of activity.
Parks and Rec activity, correct.
But like a AYSO or something like that would, on the Cupertino field, would get fees because it's not through Parks and Rec? Is that how that works?
Well, they would go directly to City of Cupertino's Parks and Rec to permit the use of Regnards Field as an example.
I see.
So I can clarify that too, because I'm part of AWS, right? So two things I can clarify, both the questions, what we do. So one is the first one, let me clarify first. We did rent some schools, okay? So classroom for giving trainings, management training for the officials. So what happened in that case, it's a whole day training. Faria we rented, and we had to pay for the custodian for the whole day, even though the custodian was not there, like kind of whether he's there or not doesn't matter. When he comes for opening, let's say 9 to 5, if I'm taking that, I had to be paying for the whole day for one person, right? In addition to that rental thing, we did it in past multiple times. My own organization, we did that. So of course it's a non-profit, so probably you'll get a little bit, but I think the custodian charges are more or less same for everybody. Okay, that's number one. Number two is the field rental. Field rental, we apply for permit every season to the Park and Rec of Cupertino, and they approve it which field and what time. Now they have also changed. Actually, earlier we used to get a blanket permit. Now they also moved to Cupertino City, moved to a per hour basis. So that means they can get the better money from us. So what happens? All the the sports teams also become smart. So they started monitoring exactly what they want. They ask for it, and they also try to get that. So 2 hours if you are using it for a extension like a 10 weeks period, you take a permit and pay them. So it is nothing that won't come to the school. That will go to the check will be paid to the
city.
Yeah, and again there is also a resident versus non-resident. You get some benefits if you have 60% of your participation is from the Cupertino, then there is a better benefit. If it is more than that, or if it's another way, then you will not get that concession.
So how do I ask this question? Is that is that agreement set in stone so that we don't get any of that rental money or field use money? Is
The structure of the agreement was set up that way so that since the city was going to be bearing the cost of maintaining the fields, that they would be able to use the funds that were being generated from its use to help defer those costs without any additional funding. But actually, the agreement that we have with the city is that we do pay a portion of the water bills. So we do have some skin in the use of the maintaining of the fields. We do have to pay some of the watering bill.
The claim is that city is not generating as much as, their maintenance cost is more than what they get the revenue.
is that true?
Yeah.
Is the maintenance cost more than what they're generating?
So I'm wondering, do we want to bring back that piece as a discussion? Because it doesn't quite, what the agreement that we have with the city of Cupertino doesn't necessarily fit this conversation. And so maybe we talk about.
Well, I mean, we
bringing that back.
can bring it back, but can I add one thing? I mean, the other reasons for putting this agreement in place was back in the days. I don't think the district had enough staff to maintain all those fields. I mean, if we were then in the business of doing it, we would be talking about having to increase the department quite a bit to maintain that number of fields for both Cupertino as well as the Sunnyvale schools as well.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. No, yeah, thank you for bringing it back. Okay.
I think
That's
we
fine.
should bring it back though,
Yeah.
because I think we've talked about this water thing before. And we've talked about changing that agreement so that they do assume all the water costs in both cities. And we didn't change it at that time, but I think it's worth bringing back and discussing again with this board.
Certainly, we can. Staff can bring it back.
Any more? Okay, thanks. Hello.
So you can tell me if I'm out in the weeds here, but we have some sites where we will get with some, maybe not frequently, but with some level of frequency, complaints about sort of just the types of, more than just individuals choosing to use the school fields after hours kind of thing, actually sort of organized groups that meet, be it dog play groups, even though they're not supposed to use them as off-leash dog parks, or fitness groups, even though, it's just technically probably somebody, collecting Venmo and running a little fitness group or something like that. We don't really have an enforcement mechanism for those kinds of things to collect on any of this, right?
Yeah, that's the big question, or not the question, but really the challenge that we have, because our community, our neighbors feel that our school properties are just an extension of the community. And when we say to them that, they have to use the field or use the facility, they have to put in a permit request and pay
show insurance
and pay all that. I understand. But maybe to answer your question is that going through the whole process of getting an approved permit ensures that individual or that group has first rights to use or at their request the facility. But then obviously you do have the occasional and casual person that comes through and wants to use it, and as long as no one else has requested or is paying, I guess, for the use, we typically don't make it a concern or an issue, because it becomes an enforcement challenge for the district to go out there and keep track of, look out for those that don't have approved permits for the use.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason it's even on my mind to begin with is I think City of Sunnyvale has been running some public safety notices about particularly the off-leash dog issues that have been going on in that city. So I'm wondering if, I don't know if there's more signage we need to do, communication with the neighborhoods we need to do.
Yeah, I
you know,
mean,
something that says we do have a formal process if you're getting together with a group kind of thing. I don't know, but
I mean, I believe we have the signage out there, and I think there's one more thing we do need to bring back up as a discussion going forward is really, you know, as a district, are we taking a particular position in terms of how secured we make our campuses? And what I'm talking about is just like fences in general.
right.
And so since I've been back, I've been listening to some folks in the community because we have put up fences now in areas that did not have a fence. And in one case, really the school now is completely cut off from any casual usage from the community. And I've mentioned to Stacy that, you know, I'd like to bring a discussion back to the board to confirm what our position is, because I think there's got to be some balance between the securing of our school properties. Obviously, during the day when kids are there, we have every right to lock off the campus. But then after hours, to what degree do we have any portion of the campus accessible for people that don't go through the permitting process and put in a request?
Yeah. Right. More of the community park aspect of it than, yeah. Okay, fair enough. I would be in favor of something coming back along both of those lines, both what Leslie described and what you're bringing up. Great, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Laurie. Okay, Jerry.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, but just to kind of share some information on that thread, because it's a field use issues when we had talked about in the 2x2, and I just dug up a memo that the city sent us in May of 2019. You were asking how much does it cost for them to maintain the field. They assert that it's on 1.22 million. This is back in 1819, and then the money that they collected was about 163. So they assert that they're losing money. I disagree. I don't think it costs 1.22 million to maintain 45 acres, but I would, so thank you for, I think there's a lot of support on the board to revisit this, and so we can bring that up. But I'll share that with you. I just look at it. It was sent to just myself and Jeff, and then I think I have shared it with Satish and Dr. Baker back then, but I don't think the rest of the board has seen this, so I'll share that with y'all. My questions, item 29 on the terms and conditions, if we could bring that up. So there was a line that was struck here, that very last line. Why would we not want to reserve the right to cancel use permits of people who didn't pay? That seems to limit us. And I was just wondering if there's a reason for striking that line. No, I mean, I think it's for future, like people who don't pay when it's due, when they come in.
They just rewrote the language. So if
We
you
did.
look at the one above, it says failure to pay a timely manner will result in
Okay, so
denial
it's
of
a
future
tighter.
use. I think
Okay.
they just
Reworded
reworded it.
Okay, so we don't lose that. Thank you. And then in terms of the, let's see, the increases that are being proposed here, do you have a sense of how much more revenue that would result for us?
I do have that number for you.
Okay.
So all I can go by is the current year. Based on the current year's usage of these, there's like 4 areas: blacktops, fields, parking lots, and the tennis courts. So just in these 4 areas, based on the current uses, based on this increase, it would have generated about $23,000 of extra revenue.
Okay.
So
All
for the
right.
current year, and it's obviously it's a partial year.
Sure. All right.
And then for the custodials, had we been charging it at our current rates, our current costs, it would be about another $12,000 increase in terms of custodial.
Got it. All right,
Marginal.
Thanks. And then in your presentation, then when you talked about group 2, you talked about there's a discounted rate to help recover the costs. So for group 2, then, which I presume are nonprofits not related to youths, why wouldn't we go for full cost recovery? I mean, I understand nonprofits do good, et cetera, but I was just wondering, do you have a sense of how much of the cost we're recovering if it's not a full recovery?
No, that's one of the things I was mentioning, that as we move forward with Facilitron,
right?
I will be asking them to kind of help look at help us calculate what our true cost recovery rate is. There's actually a formula that districts have to follow to determine and set those rates. And so once we establish what that baseline is based on the amount of what our costs to maintain our facilities divided by the amount of square footage, we will have kind of a true cost. And then from there, we can determine whether or not for cost recovery, whether we're actually charging the full amount. But then for nonprofits, should the board want to continue to provide some discounted rate, then it would be discounted from that cost recovery.
Okay, so the plan here, because I see there's an annotation that this may be brought back for approval by the board on May 12th. So this sounds like the plan is we'll go ahead and go with this. Facilitron will help us collect the data, and at some point, I'll come back and readjust. So would you see this being, and you had also mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, we hadn't looked at this in a while. So would you recommend this being something we visit on an annual basis?
Yeah,
what's your thinking on that?
I would like to. And currently now, this version of the terms and conditions and the rate sheet don't show up other than in a board item. And most other districts actually incorporate this as part of an administrative regulation as a subset of the board policy. So what I like to do is get this formatted into the administrative regulation. And then I'm hoping that we follow a schedule to update board policies and, again, administrative regulations. And then we could very much write into the policy of the administrative regulation that this is brought and reviewed on an annual basis. So we can do stuff like that.
Sure, it sounds like a good idea. Thank you. Thanks, Atish.
Thanks, Jerry. So I have a couple of comments, right? So I think going back to multiple comments on this. So I don't know whether people are aware that they need to take permit. That's number one. Okay, because they don't know even such facility. For example, especially the outdoor part of it. I understand that when they're using a classroom or a GLC kind of places, they'll have to rent it. But a blacktop, for example, I don't think anybody's aware that like they have to be taking a permit, right? And especially with respect to like, for example, Cupertino fields, right? Cupertino outdoor, Sundays, it's not rented out at all. For example, today, it's for public Sunday. We don't have to pay for using Sunday unless it's an organized event, okay? An unorganized event, you can go to any Cupertino field on a Sunday and you can use it. So that includes the blacktop. Okay, so where you have a potential, way to get some money there, but we are not using that, right? So only Saturdays it's being rented out field, right? But still not the blacktop. So any unorganized stuff you can do there. Organized, don't really charge it, right? So that's one thing. So I think we can make it a little bit more clear, or make people aware that first of all there is a facility for them to rent it. I don't know how many people are aware. And the people who's using, they're not aware that they have to be paying. This is a challenge. I think I don't know where you communicate or how you communicate with people on that. As Laurie said that, I don't know, signage or some other way for, because people have a feeling, or including me, like, before I started formally getting involved in some other rental activities, anything close, classrooms and stuff like that makes sense. Other outdoor is all free, kind of.
Yeah, the outdoor use is obviously is the hard one to deal with, and if we don't know anything about it, is really the challenge. And I'll share this with the board. I mean, it was just a week ago, actually, it was brought to my attention that there was a flyer going around in the community over at Meyerholtz. Actually, it was at Meyerholtz that there were a couple of Miller high school kids that were wanting to have a volleyball camp. And so there was some advertising going around the community, and someone in the community had raised that to my attention. And so I reached out to the students and over there, and they were gracious in following up with me. And to your point, they were not aware at all that there was a use of facility. And so I kind of explained to them what it is, how it works, and what it enables them to do. And I said, we're here to help. And if you like to go that route, we'll be more than happy to do that. But I think you're right. There's the perception out there that, it's not something that they have to permit, but.
Okay. Thank you. Any more comments, questions? Any public comments?
No public comment on this item.
Thank you, because then I think we'll move to the next one. Let's see what is next. So 7.6 quarterly report on Williams uniform complaint.
There are no complaints.
Okay. Good. Any comments, questions? Thank you. Any public comment here?
No public comments.
Okay, great. So we are done with information presentations. Then let's go to the discussion item. 8.
I think we have one. Oh yeah, it is discussion.
Right? 8.1.
You're right.
Yep. So there's a pilot.
Yes, so Lynn is going to present this information. We're in the process of working towards identifying new instructional materials for history, social science for the K-5 grades. And Lynn has been working with a wonderful team of teachers. So she's going to tell you about that and look ahead to the next steps.
Good evening. Tonight we'll be sharing an overview of the K-5 history, social science vetting process. So in addition to the vetting process, we'll also present the outcomes, including the recommended pilot materials, and we'll seek approval of the pilot in the upcoming May 12th board meeting. So we began our work in September 2021 with the support of the SCOE Coordinator of History, Social Science, and Civic Engagement. Following in-depth professional development of the key shifts in the history social science framework, our group of teachers and administrators vetted all elementary curricula on the CDE adoption matrix. So there were 4 possibilities on the matrix for elementary schools, and our cadre of teachers vetted all 4. So we utilized the 2018 adoption toolkit, which comes from CISC and the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association. This toolkit is provided by SCOE, and as I mentioned, it's utilized with their support. So our grade level groups vetted and ranked the 4 curricula from the state matrix based on integration and alignment, including looking at the big picture, integration of key concepts such as content, inquiry, literacy, and citizenship. And then we also looked at analysis skills such as chronological thinking, research and evidence, point of view, and historical interpretation. So these programs were 3 of the programs were identified as warranting more in-depth evaluation. So those 3 were McGraw-Hill, Savas, and TCI. Next, our grade level groups vetted the 3 programs focused on the areas of standards alignment, program organization, assessment, universal access, and instructional planning and support. So after completing the initial process with these 2 programs, we then spent an additional day revisiting each curricula through a structured process in first grade level groups. And then we did it also in vertical slice groups of K through 5 in order to dig deeper into evaluation and comparison. So at this point, the group felt comfortable narrowing the field, and they identified 2 programs as pilot recommendations. So the 2 potential programs are McGraw-Hill and TCI. In addition to that, we were able to offer parents and staff the opportunity to review digital access to both of the curricula and offer input. Their input included the desire for engaging lessons and hands-on projects, efficiency and ease of use for both students and teachers, materials that can be accessed by all learners. And then there was also a mention of having a balance of both online and physical textbook access for students. So our proposed pilot would commence in September with a group of teachers representing a variety of grade levels and sites. They would teach approximately 9 weeks in each of the programs and then provide feedback. We would also seek feedback from the piloting students as we have in the past. And then, of course, we'd offer another opportunity for parents and staff to review and provide input on the curricula. Our projected costs include substitute teachers to release our pilot group for 3 days and an after-school meeting that's spaced throughout the process for training and evaluation. In past adoption, this structure has been successful because it provides sort of this balance of training for implementation, but also time for reflection and calibration with peers. Our next steps are there, and so they include piloting the 2 curricula supported by professional development in fall 2022 through winter 2023. We would then gather input from, again, the pilot teachers, pilot students, parents, and staff in order to determine program fit for CUSD in winter through spring 2023. And then our aim would be to bring an adoption recommendation to the board in spring 2023. Finally, our projected district-wide implementation would take place in fall 2023. So are there any questions?
Thanks, Philip. Any questions? Oh, Lorraine.
I don't have any.
Okay, okay. Jerry, anything?
I was just wondering at this point, do you have a sense of what are the evaluation criteria that we'll be using for making the selection?
So we use that adoption toolkit. We take questions from that toolkit to create the survey that the teachers and students complete.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, dear. One question is it like every school it is going to be piloted, or it's like when you say across means like what is it?
Yeah, so it's not every school. We currently have an application out, and so interested teachers fill out the application, tell us about their background and their desire to pilot. And then we create a cross section so that we have balance of grade levels. And then we do have wide site representation, but not necessarily every site. We also cannot actually have enough subs to do every site with multiple teachers.
Okay, and this group 1, group 2, group 3, right? Which is, and what's a group size? What is that like typical? Is it like number of
you mean when we
teachers or what?
vetted?
Yeah, when you
Back
vetted,
on
yeah.
that slide. So it depended
Yeah,
by
correct.
grade level. Some grade levels had 3 teachers. Others had a different amounts. In vertical slice groups, they were between 5 and 6 because I tried to get K through 5th grade teachers in one group. So in this particular chart that's showing, there was approximately 5 to 6 teachers in each group.
Thank you. Any more discussions? Anything? Any more questions? Any public
No
comment?
public comments on this item.
So you said this will come back as a for us to
We'll come back for
as an action
And on the next meeting.
next meeting. Okay, are we okay? Everybody? Okay. Okay, thank you. Then let's go to think that one is done. Action is done. I think we are done with the actions. Then the board activities. 10.1.
No, you have to do the action number 9.
9.1.
Oh, okay. Discussion action. Really not sorry about it. Okay.
So this was shared at the board advanced. Information about this was shared at the board advance regarding the projector project. And so we are bringing it forward as an action item.
Okay.
I move we approve.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we need a
Well, we
second.
talked about it.
Yeah,
I'll second.
okay. Thanks, Jerry. Any discussion needed? Any more? Any public comments?
No, they're not.
Okay, so then shall we go ahead and
It's a roll call vote.
roll call? Okay,
Trust,
yeah.
Trustee Lou,
Aye.
Trustee Cunningham,
Aye.
Trustee Vogel,
Aye.
Trustee Leong,
Aye.
Trustee Manhattan.
Bye. So it's passed. Okay, then now going back to 10.1 then. Right, action is done. Yeah, board activities. Anyone?
Nothing here.
So I had the opportunity to join the Cupertino and Hsinchu Sister City student exchange program. This is something that the city of Cupertino has done for many years, but the city runs it, but our students are very much a part of the student exchange program. For the last 2 years, they haven't been able to do it. And so this year, they are doing a virtual exchange. And so was able to attend it, attend the presentation, the student presentations, and just want to, shout out to Cha-Ching Lin and to Angela Noguera, who are our staff and teachers who are really a big part of this program, and to our 7th and 8th graders who are doing this really culturally rich educational program with a sister city in Taiwan. So it was really cool.
That's really, Lorraine,
I don't have anything tonight.
I don't have-
Jerry. For me also, I had a good India trip and came back. So, anything from your side? No? Okay, so that's good. Then agenda setting. Do we have anything? Just keeping it open, and if you want to add. Sylvain. Okay.
I think the item we talked about bringing the joint field use agreement
Okay.
for discussion to the board.
Okay, so there is a one. Just I wanted to. There is a 2x2 actually coming.
We have a 2x2 on May 9th, right?
May 9th.
Right.
So
We can agendize it for that too, to discuss.
yeah,
with the
so
council.
I don't know whether that should be part of there as well. Or we have to.
But I think the next board meeting will be after May 9th. So we could discuss it there and then bring the whatever discussion results back up to the board as part of the.
Should staff be doing anything for that with them? That's what just because we can just open it up and discuss, but I don't know how much it will be
But
productive.
we could do that maybe separately about the 2x2 planning. Yeah, but that's a good idea. I would support that.
Speaking about 2x2, I wonder if we need to discuss participation in that. The Los Altos one has kind of not really fallen apart, but sort of. And we're having great difficulties getting together. I don't know how you feel about it, Lori, but
Well, I think I think Leslie and Sandy raised the main issue is that their city council cycle for assigning new council members to it is not aligned to the school year. It's
Right.
aligned to their calendar year, which then means we're on half and half. One set of city council members schedules for the first half of the year and a second set of city council members schedules for the second half of the year. And it's just been really hard to plan dates that work for all the
yeah,
districts.
and well, I'm wondering if we want to talk about it as a board, to what extent we want to continue with these. My experience is that it's pretty much an exchange of information that could happen over email. And it's hard to bring everybody together, but I don't know if that's something we want to talk about.
I can ask Stacy to, she and I can talk about it, and then we can talk about bringing it back, and then she can talk with Satish. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So that's fine then. That's the only thing, right? Okay, then I think we are almost for the closed session. Is there a public comment for closed session?
No, there are not.
Okay, then shall we adjourn for the closed session now? Okay, thank you. So the report from the closed session, the board has voted unanimously to reject pending claim 21-22-BS01. The meeting is adjourned.